Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto and Ino Team 7 bashing. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Kaara and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Virago. Ino stared at the mirror. Long and hard. Is that it? Her neatly plucked eyebrows collided into a full-fledged frown at her outspoken thought, the tip of her finger gingerly scraping over a tiny mound that would have otherwise been invisible if Ino hadn't been squinting at her reflection for an entire hour. She gave the mound an irritated scratch before exhaling loudly and picked up a hairbrush from her cluttered makeup kit. Sifting through her half-dried sheen of pale golden hair, Ino started complaining at her reflection. Which could do nothing but to listen diligently like any good reflection should. It must be that awful lotion Mum bought, brush, brush, brush. Or maybe it's not it. Maybe it's an allergy, brush, tug, brush. Oh bother. What did I do to deserve a gigantic boil on my first day as a genin? Tug, brush, brush. And to think I've spent all my allowance just so I can look nice today. This is so not fair. The blonde's voice was slightly muffled when she clamped her teeth on the handle of her hairbrush, fingers expertly trying back her hair into its customary ponytail. She rummaged among scattered glittering scabbards and odd pieces of jewelries for hair clips, finding 3 that were quite plain and didn't have any exaggerated flower patterns or multicolored studs on them. Slipping those into their rightful places, Ino spewed out her hairbrush and proceeded on trimming her ponytail in silence. The lines of frown on her face had disappeared by the time she traded her fluffy milky white bathrobe for her unofficial sleeveless purple uniform, humming away to a vague childhood tune. The sharp knock on her door almost made Ino jump in surprise, pausing from her current task of wrapping her middle section with a roll of gauze. Ino? That was her mother. You're going to be late if you don't hurry. Your father wants to have a word with you before you go. I'll be down in a minute, Mum. She snipped the end of the gauze in a flash, hastily tucking the roll away in a small bag and cast a sweeping glance around her room to make sure that everything was in place. Ino adjusted the end of her pale blue comforter, running a hand over the soft mattress underneath it to smooth some unwanted creases that offended her neat eyes. Satisfied, the blonde jogged out of the room, the linoleum floor a cool welcome to her bare feet. Ino trudged downstairs with the enthusiasm of a 5-year-old kid, self-consciously tugging at her clothes. Her father was already there, flipping through the Konoha daily, and only looked up when Ino took a seat across him. You're going to have a new team today, right? The Jounin asked, smiling at his only daughter. Ino dumped a pancake on her plate and poured a substantial amount of maple syrup onto it, grinning at her father. I can't wait to know who's going to be in my group. I bet we're going to be the best new team this year. Her mother tipped some sausages into Ino's plate and said, I just hope you'll be careful, Ino. Heavens know why you wanted to be a ninja, such a dangerous job. I always thought you like handling flowers. I'm not a little girl anymore, Mum, the blonde pursed her lips, chewing on her sweetened sausage. Dad's a ninja, and he's cool. That's my princess, father and daughter chuckled when the mother heaved an exasperated sigh, muttering something under her breath as she turned to the lump of sizzling scrambled eggs in the frying pan. Say, can I have my allowance early this month, Dad? Ino asked through a mouthful of pancake, busily cutting said pancake into smaller pieces. I want to buy that new set of kunai they have in Harumi's. The Jounin took a sip on his cup of coffee thoughtfully. What happened to your last allowance? I had to buy extra rolls of gauze because Mum keeps complaining that she didn't have enough to bandage you up after your missions. She pouted in mock anger at her father, who laughed sheepishly and scratched the back of his head. Then, my wardrobe needed some new clothes and I found out that they were having a sale yesterday. Mum always said that even ninjas need to look good. Alright. I'll give it to you after you come back from your first team meeting, okay? Ino swallowed the last of her breakfast and flashed him a wide grin. She spared a glance at an antique grandfather clock in one corner of the kitchen and choked when she saw the time. Washing down all the food with a glass of milk, Ino sprang to her feet and capered to hug her mother and gave her father's cheek a peck. Scrambling into her ninja sandal, Ino glanced over her shoulder. I'm going to make you proud, Mum, Dad. See you later. Yamanaka Siki smiled fondly at her daughter's disappearing figure, a pot of coffee in one hand while another held a plate of scrambled eggs. She looked at her husband and remarked in a warm, soft voice, I think you're right to agree when she told you that she wanted to be a ninja. It's a shame to have all that energy wasted in doing flower arrangements. Ino has the potential, Inashi folded his newspaper and leaned back into his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. In a teasing, smug tone, he said, she's my daughter after all. It's in her genes. Of course, dear. Keep telling yourself that, maybe it'll come true. Hey, what's that supposed to mean? The room was packed with other new genins when Ino sauntered in, searching for familiar faces that didn't annoy her on daily basis. She caught sight of Ami, the snotty bitch / her archenemy, surrounded by a group of twittering admirers, smirking when she saw the girl paled as their eyes made contact. Ami hurriedly looked away, stuttering something to her groupies. Ino shook her head in amusement and made her way toward Shikamaru before something, or rather someone, made her stop on track. The mischievous grin made its way onto her face as she eyed Sakura and Sasuke, the latter engaged in a one-way conversation with the former. Sasuke-kun. Latching herself onto the Uchiha, Ino stuck out her tongue at Sakura, who was gaping angrily at them. It was her favorite game. Pissing Sakura off. She wasn't really interested in the sallow-faced Sasuke, preferring her boyfriend to be more talkative and cheerful than Sasuke's patented grunts and air of theatrical angst. The boy was too dramatic for her own liking, anyway. The only reason why she pretended to fawn over Sasuke was Sakura. That pink-haired forehead girl that had no whatsoever confidence in anything that didn't involve tons of books and loads of memorizing. Ino wanted to help, in her twisted kind of way. Get away from Sasuke-kun, Ino pig. Make me, forehead girl. Sasuke grunted and disentangled himself easily from Ino's hands, choosing a seat some feet away from the two females. He proceeded to fall into the part brooding, part thinking look that he had perfected over the years. Girls giggled and squealed, guys had to restrain themselves from gagging. Ino raised an eyebrow when a blonde she vaguely remembered from the academy started harassing Sasuke, crouching close to the Uchiha. Too close, in fact. So close that when an anonymous boy accidentally knocked him with an elbow, the blonde stumbled forward and kissed Sasuke. Ino thought she would have died that day when her oxygen supply was cut short from excessive laughter. When she finally managed to wipe the tears away from her eyes, the blonde was on the floor, supporting several large bumps and a facial makeover courtesy of Sakura, who had a maniacal glint gleaming dangerously in her eyes. Sasuke looked traumatized, his usually expressionless face twisted into something akin to a mix of aghast, confusion and mortification. For the second time that morning alone, Ino gasped for breath in between mad bouts of laughter. She was saved from death by asphyxiation when Iruka sensei walked in and commanded immediate attention. Shoulders shaking slightly in her attempt to not laugh, Ino prodded the blonde with a foot. "Wake up, you idiot," she hissed as the boy stirred. "Iruka sensei's here." One eye blinked open, followed by a groan. "I'm still alive." Unfortunately, yes, Ino held out a hand and helped the boy to a seat beside hers, taking in the blue eyes and prominent whisker marks. "You're Uzumaki, right?" "Yeah," he trailed on, wincing when he fingered his bumps. "Sheesh, Sakura-chan gets more and more violent these days." "Ouch. You really are an idiot," she ignored his glare and tossed a handkerchief at the blonde, who quirked an eyebrow in response. "Clean those cuts, whisker face. You might get an infection." "Thanks. Don't mention it." Iruka sensei shuffled the papers in his hands importantly before smiling at the expectant faces of the genins. "Now, Team 7 is Uchiha Sasuke." The boy grunted indifferently. "Uzumaki Naruto." The blonde besides Ino groaned in misery. "And Yamanaka Ino." The girl blinked in surprise. That was an unexpected turn of event. Earlier, she thought she would have been assigned to a team that consisted of an Akimichi and a Nara. Her father often told her stories about his efficient teamworks with his fellow jounins, especially Akimichi and Nara. He also told her that his partners have sons going to the academy as well, about her age, and it would be a blast if she could continue the tradition of the Yamanaka, Nara and Akimichi combo. She had nothing against the idea, though Shikamaru grated her nerves with his unmatched lazy acidness, and Chouji with foods was just plain disgusting. Before Ino could say anything, Iruka had paved on ahead with the list. Teammate will be Inyazuka Kiba, Aburam Shino and Hyuga Hinata. Nara Shikamaru, Akimichi Chouji and Haruno Sakura are Team 10. Your assigned teacher will come shortly after this, and I hope you will all grown up to become the proud shinobi of Konoha. Those who don't are going to hear from me." Cheerful laughter greeted the half-hearted joke. Iruka sensei bowed and made his way out of the room, leaving the newly promoted genins to chatter happily with their new teammates while waiting for their teachers. Ino was staring ahead at the blank wall, still surprised by the arrangements and thinking how her father would react to it. How disappointed her father would be. Maybe she could meet Iruka sensei afterwards and demand a change of teammates. Ino distantly felt a hand descended onto her shoulder, snapping out of her musing only when someone began shaking her to and fro. Slapping the offending hand away, Ino glared at its owner. It was the blonde. "What?" she asked, irritated. The boy grinned, a wide foxy grin that made his eyes twinkle impishly. "You're Yamanaka Ino, right? We're going to be in a same team." Ino sighed heavily. "I happen to realize that, Uzumaki. Call me Naruto. It's weird having your teammate calling you by your last name every time." "Then you can call me Ino," she said, smiling a bit despite herself. She looked around before turning to Naruto, "Where's our last teammate?" "Sasuke bastard. He's somewhere," was the vague reply she got from the blonde genin. "Probably hiding from his fan club. Again." "Poor boy," snickered Ino, toying absently with her ponytail. "This is boring. I wonder when our sensei will come." Naruto cracked his knuckles and exclaimed confidently, "He's probably on his way right now." 3 hours and a peeved blonde later. "Where the hell is that goddamn sensei?" Yawning, Ino allowed her head to rest on the table, eyes scanning the room without much gusto. It was empty, save for Naruto, who was hyperventilating in front of her, Sasuke, who was brooding at the other end of the class, and herself. No whatsoever sign of any sensei. All the other teams had long departed with their respected teachers, who unlike theirs, arrived in time. She had shrugged in pity at Sakura, who had stomped sulkily behind her teammates in a tow. The pink-haired girl shot Sasuke one last longing look before disappearing down the hallway, the same direction Ino wished she had gone 3 hours ago. Noticing that Naruto was fiddling with a blackboard duster, Ino lifted her head and asked, "What are you doing?" "It's a punishment for our unpunctual sensei," the boy replied cheekily, giggling as he set the duster on top of the sliding door. Jumping down from the stool, Naruto clapped his dusty palms together and grinned. "Now we just have to wait for that late dumbus." "The Jounin won't fall for such kindergarten trick," Sasuke commented, the most they had heard from him all morning. Naruto and Ino adroitly ignored him. As if on cue, the door opened just as Sasuke finished talking to reveal a mass of bushy silver hair. Which was promptly covered in a cloud of chalky dust when Naruto's plan, surprisingly, worked. A tall and lanky man in typical Jounin attire walked into the room, shaking his head free from the white dust with a hand, while another firmly held on a book. Ino had to clamp a hand over her mouth to stop herself from bursting into another fit of laughter, while Sasuke was eyeing the Jounin suspiciously. Naruto was jumping and pointing at the Jounin like a drugged monkey. The silver white-haired man rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "My first impression on you is not good." Awkward silence ensued. 10 minutes later, they were already seated outside, Naruto sitting between Ino and Sasuke with their Kakashi-sensei propping his chin up with a hand in front of them. His one visible eye was regarding his new charges lazily, one of his hands rested across his knees. Ino thought that if it weren't for the Jounin vest, the man would have looked more like some drunken sleazebag that she often ran across in front of bars. From their introduction earlier, he only revealed his name and a load of other unimportant crap. Naruto had an insane ambition to become the next Hokage. Ino also found out that Sasuke had homicidal urges. "Boys. Now that we've known one another. We only know your name," Ino pointedly interjected, arms crossed against her chest. Kakashi ignored her and continued on. "Next meeting is tomorrow, at the clearing by the bridge. I want you to be there by 8 and don't eat any breakfast. I don't want anyone throwing up on me. Got that?" "Why would we throw up?" questioned Sasuke in his usual silent way. After his rather chilling revelation that his dream in life was to kill a certain someone, Ino had scooted to a safe distance away from the Uchiha, suddenly wary of her safety around the boy. "Now, that's my secret, isn't it?" their silver-haired sensei cheerfully retorted, standing up and dusted the back of his pants nonchalantly. "See you tomorrow, kids." And with that last bid, the Jounin disappeared into a cloud of smoke. "I think Kakashi-sensei is a serious weirdo," Naruto muttered matter-of-factly under his breath. He jumped up and yelled, "Who's up for some ramen?" Sasuke abandoned his seat and started to stalk away. "I have better things to do than hanging out with dead lasts." "Why you?" "I'll go with you," Ino piped up, trying to nip the argument short. She did a short stretch to loosen her stiff muscle and smiled at Naruto. "All that waiting makes me hungry." "Anger forgotten," the blonde boy eagerly agreed. They walked side by side to Ichiraku, chatting quite contentedly about the weather, jutsus, Iruka-sensei, everything. By the time they arrived at the ramen stand, Ino had learnt that Naruto was an orphan, living alone inside a small apartment somewhere in the heart of the village. He told her that he didn't have many friends while he was in the academy. It puzzled Ino, as she remembered her mother warning her about Uzumaki Naruto when she was younger. She didn't have the chance to meet him before, studying in separate classes, but as they laughed at some odd jokes Naruto picked up from Iruka-sensei, Ino couldn't understand why her mother would warn her about someone as cheery as Naruto. Naruto didn't look dangerous at all. The welcoming warmth of Ichiraku ramen made Ino's stomach grumble, nodding at the owner as she parted the curtain. The stand was deserted by the time they claimed 2 stools, sitting cozily together. "What would you two have?" the owner asked, his voice thick and friendly. "I want beef and shrimp ramen." Naruto. "I'll take vegetarian ramen, thank you." Ino. "Vegetarian? What's the point of eating ramen if you want veggies?" "The point is that it's healthy, whisker face." "Stop calling me whisker face. Then stop criticizing my eating preference." "Order up." Still glaring at one another, Ino and Naruto swiftly snatched one bowl each, jabbing at the innocent noodles vindictively with their chopsticks, whilst their eyes were locked in a glaring match. When both finally turned their attention back to their bowls of ramen, they immediately realized their blunder. Ino ended up with a beef and shrimp ramen, while Naruto had her vegetarian one. Cheeks coloring slightly at the mistake, Ino looked up from the bowl and offered an apologizing grin to the blonde boy besides her. Naruto shrugged nonchalantly, and they traded bowls in silence, though Ino noticed that the boy's cheeks had adopted pretty tints of bright cherry. "Sorry I yelled at you," the boy softly mumbled, spewing some bits of chewed noodle onto the counter as he did so. Ino grinned widely. "Nah, it's my fault too. My dad always said that I have quick temper." She glanced at the darkening sky outside, frowning when she spotted dark rain clouds parading over Konoha. Rumbles of young thunder echoed in a distance. "Shit, I think it's gonna rain. Mom is so going to nag me to death if I got home late. You don't mind me slipping back first, right?" "I don't, then," Naruto added in a more morose tone, "nobody's waiting me back home anyway." "You go, Mr. Sunshine," the girl teased, quickly deciding that sadness didn't suit Naruto at all. She ruffled his hair, much to the boy's annoyance, and slurped down some hot broth from her ramen. Dumping some money on the counter to cover her order, Ino said, "I'll see you tomorrow then, K." "Aye, Ino-chan." Ino paused at her new title, arching an eyebrow at Naruto. The blonde waved his chopsticks before turning back to his bowl, shoveling the food down his throat in an inhuman pace. Shaking her head, Ino jogged towards her home, the jogs quickly replaced by a sprint when she felt drops of water crashing against her skin. She shielded her face with a hand, wiping her face in intervals as the increasingly thick curtain of falling raindrops restricted her vision. The street ahead was reduced to mere blurs, dim spheres of light from random lampposts were the only indication that she was going the right way. Ino grimaced when she nearly slipped on a puddle of mud, trying to stay on the paved road. Before she could take another step, a hand latched itself onto her wrist. "What the hey, let me go." Ino instantly regretted yelling when filthy rainwater rushed into her lungs from her open mouth, causing the girl to cough and spluttered painfully, her chest heaving from the sheer effort to keep breathing. The hand yanked Ino away from the road underneath her feet, dragging her towards an unknown direction. Ino struggled against the firm grip, succeeding only in making its owner tighten the cold fingers over her flesh. Fear manifested itself inside the girl's mind, squeezing her heart with undiluted panic. What if it was a murderer? What if it was a rapist? The rain made Ino unable to discern her captor, except that whoever he or she was, the person was doing a fabulous job in killing her blood circulation. Through the slits of her eyes, Ino could make out a glowing something a few feet away from her, hoping against hope that nothing bad was going to happen. Suddenly, Ino couldn't feel the harsh rain beating down on her face anymore. "Open your eyes." The curt voice was strangely familiar, and despite her fear, Ino slowly fluttered her eyes open, wincing as a shower of bright light assaulted her eyes. After her eyes had adjusted themselves to the brightness, Ino found herself blinking into the face of none other than Uchiha Sasuke. The blonde girl immediately tensed, her sore throat burning from shock as Sasuke's dark orbs pierced through her mental defense. She took a step back. A glance at her surrounding revealed that she was standing in someone's porch, the light pouring out from an open door. Sasuke was wearing a coat over his dark blue yukata, a pink umbrella clutched possessively in one hand. Ino's first instinct was to snark at the umbrella. "Pink, Sasuke. Shut up." Ino's second instinct was to yell at the dark-haired boy. "What the hell do you think you're doing? I was on my way home." "You're heading towards a ditch," Sasuke informed the blonde, his brows knitted into a dark brown. He slipped out of his drenched sandals and took a step through the door, placing the pink umbrella into a bamboo stand. Leaning against the doorway, the Uchiha said, "Kakashi-sensei wanted to meet the three of us, he'll be pissed to find your body inside that ditch tomorrow." "Wow. That like the first time I heard you complete a whole sentence." "I'm impressed," Ino said, deadpan. Remembering her manner, she flashed Sasuke a sweet smile. "Thanks for saving my life." HN. They ended up staring at one another for several uncomfortable minutes. Do you have a phone?" Ino asked, shivering from a sudden gust of wind and wished she hadn't left Ichiraku. At least she won't be trembling like a drowned street rat there. "I need to call my parents. They're going to get worried if I don't." Sasuke narrowed his eyes, a sudden unidentified gleam flashing through those darker eyes of his. Ino kicked herself mentally, thinking that the Uchiha was offended when she mentioned parents, like Naruto had earlier. The girl chewed on her bottom lip crossly as she came to the sudden realization that she was saddled with two chronic cases of lonely stubborn orphans. Iruka-sensei is so going to pay for this, shifting her weight to one leg. Ino waited for Sasuke's answer, praying that it didn't involve bodily throwing her out of his porch into the heavy rain or anything equally atrocious. To her surprise, the dark-haired boy beckoned her to come inside. Now, knowing Sasuke's reputation as the heartless walking block of ice that was averse to any kind of vocal and physical contact, coupled with the fact that that said block of ice had revealed that his goal in life was to murder someone just hours ago, it was fully understandable for Ino to hesitate at the invitation. She looked around for any possible dry escapes and upon finding none, the blonde exhaled in resignation and started taking off her own soaked sandals. She ran a hand through her straggly hair in an attempt to appear somewhat presentable before taking a step into the Uchiha residence. Contrary to popular belief, Sasuke did not live in a thousand-year-old manor with creepy butler and painting with moving eyes or an elegant traditional Japanese dojo that covered a vast acres of land. The boy's house was a simple double-story bungalow, sparsely but stylishly furnished. There was a big fire cackling merrily in the grate and several armchairs placed strategically around the fire. On one end table was a leather-bound book, a bookmark sticking out from its many yellow pages. Ino followed Sasuke into a dimly lit hallway, wrapping her arms tighter around her quivering body with every step that she took. They eventually stopped inside a clean space that resembled a kitchen. Here, Sasuke shoved a cordless phone into her hands, moving to a set of high cabinets and began searching for something. Punching her number in an instant, Ino only had to wait until the second dial when her mother's voice greeted her eardrum. "It's me, Mum. I'm okay. I know I should have called earlier. No, really, I'm okay. I'm at a friend's house. No, I'm not at Say's. Don't worry, I'll get back as soon as the rain stops. A hotel dad. I'm sorry, okay. Love you too. Bye." Something fluffy smacked her right into the face, Ino's nose picking up the lingering scent of a fabric softener that she often used. She raised a hand to clutch at the object, which turned out to a small pink towel, and the culprit was standing with his back against the refrigerator. Placing the phone onto the tiled counter, Ino grinned in gratitude at Sasuke and wasted no time to rub her hair dry. It crossed Ino's mind that Sasuke was not really the kind of person whom anyone would call charitable, let alone showing general hospitality to other people. Her vigorous rubbing eventually halted to a stop and Ino stared at the dark-haired boy with curiosity. "Why are you being nice to me?" the blonde bluntly questioned, raking her fingers through her hair thoughtfully. Sasuke snorted. "I told you about that ditch already. You're doing that again." "Do what again?" Ino grinned. "Speaking in complete sentence. You should make it a habit, you know. It's very appealing. HN. Someone should crown you Mr. Conversation of the Year. HN. I've been meaning to ask." Ino held up the pink towel with a smirk. "What is it with you in pink color? You happen to own a lot of them. The umbrella, this. They were on sale." A muffled snicker came from the general direction of Ino. "I never knew you could be so domestically efficient. One more word and I'll throw you out. Hein, stop being so sensitive, will you?" Her smirk came anew when she saw Sasuke flinched at her words. Sure, the boy saved her from committing unintentional suicide, but even that couldn't stop Ino from picking on him. She wrapped the slightly damp towel around her neck, looking out a window and into the hazy landscape beyond the glass confinement. Besides the fact that her new outfit was sopping wet and she had created puddles of water across Sasuke's home, Ino had nothing to complain about. She even thought of asking Sasuke for a cup of hot chocolate or something warm, but figured that even the Uchiha had his limits. Therefore, Ino settled on staring at the window for the rain to recede. Ino grinned when a thought crosses her mind. The thing Sakura would do to be in her place right now. Her patience was rewarded 10 minutes later when the heavy downpour slowly reduced to soft drizzle, splashes of rainwater against the glass pane, not as intense as before. Ino abandoned her place by the counter and sauntered over to the window, pressing her face to the smooth surface to check the visibility of things outside. Convinced that she could see the ditch by now, Ino untangled the towel from her neck and walked towards Sasuke. "I think it's okay outside." She tossed said towel to the boy and smiled. "Thanks for the shelter, Sasuke. I'll find some way to pay you back later." The Uchiha shook his head. "I don't mind." Ino was almost sure that there were aquatic microorganisms waddling inside her sandals when she put them on. The sandals making weird squelching noises every time she started walking. Shaking excess water out of one sandal, Ino grimaced and turned to Sasuke. "See you tomorrow." HN. "Yeah, nice talking to you too." The raindrops were more bearable this time, and it didn't take Ino long to arrive in front of the Yamanaka flower shop without falling into any ditch. She ducked into the shop after unlocking its side door, carefully zigzagging among multicolored flowers to a back door that adjoined the shop to her home. Tipping her sandals against the wall to allow them to dry, Ino squeezed a fair amount of water from her ruined clothes before slowly pushing the door open. It led to the kitchen, which was empty. The blonde was not fazed, seeing that her father must be at work, doing missions or wetnets for the Hokage. And her mother usually spent her free time knitting inside the living room if she wasn't fussing over some new flower arrangements. I'm home, Ino quietly muttered, trudging straight towards her room on the first floor. She couldn't wait to get out of her purple uniform. It was getting too sticky and itchy for comfort. Upon arriving inside her little haven, she quickly undressed, dumping her wet clothes into the laundry basket and wrapped a bathrobe around her shivering form. Making sure that her windows were securely latched, Ino stalked to her closet, picking out a set of pajama and placed it onto her bed. She stepped into the shower, adjusting the temperature of her water heater before shrugging off the bathrobe and hung it on a peg. Warm drops of water chased the shivers and coldness away once she turned the knob, cascading down her naked curves like minuscule waterfalls. She enjoyed the welcoming sensation for a while, reaching out to grab her bottle of shampoo. Pleasant fruity scent filled the small space as Ino massaged her head through the thick white lather. The blonde leisurely took her time, scrubbing her skin free from crusty mud and slimy grime. There was even an unidentified greenish-brown thing that took 10 whole minutes until it surrendered to Ino's vicious scrubs, leaving an angry red mark just below her left collarbone. Finally turning the shower off, Ino groped blindly for a towel and stumbled into the main vicinity of her room. She heard the front door slam shut as she buttoned the last of her pajama top, her lips stretching into a wide smile when Ino recognized the pattern of footsteps echoing throughout the house. It was the sort of uneven, tired pitter-patter that could only belong to her father. She dried her hair as fast as possible, tucking some hair behind her ears and bounded downstairs. "Hey there, princess," Inashi raised a hand to greet his daughter, slouching in front of the dining table tiredly. His other hand was nursing a mug of hot coffee. A delicate chink of china against wood resounded faintly when Siki placed a bowl of chicken soup before the jounin. "How's your first day?" Ino claimed the chair to her father's right and smiled at him. "It's great. Until it started to rain." "My poor princess," the jounin laughed when Ino pouted. "Tell me about your team. How are Shikamaru and Chaoji?" "That's the thing I want to tell you, Dad," helping herself to Inashi's untouched bowl. Ino swallowed a mouthful of the delicious soup and said, "I'm not in the same team with Shika and Chaoji. And we got this weird sensei, Hada Kakashi. He came in late and we gotta meet him tomorrow for something." Her father frowned slightly at the information. "Kakashi, huh? That's interesting. And who are your other teammates, Ino?" "Uchiha Sasuke," she swallowed another mouthful. "And Uzumaki Naruto." The loud clang made Ino jump, almost upsetting the table when she spun to face her mother. There was a large pot rolling on its round bottom by Siki's feet, but what surprised Ino was the expression on the woman's face. It was a livid combination of fear and anger. Inashi was on his feet in a second, holding his wife's shoulder and whispered something to Siki. Her knuckles were turning white from the tight grip she had on a ladle, her lovely ocean blue eyes glazing over with an unfathomable look. Ino stared at her mother and then at her father before turning back to Siki. Before she could say a word, Inashi pinned her on the spot with a warning glare. "Ino, please go back to your room," the black-haired jounin's voice was laced with atypical authorization. "Now." The blonde girl stood her ground stubbornly, something she had inherited from her father. "But. Now." The order was said with such firm tone that it left no room for objection. Ino hesitated at first, but wisely succumbed to her father's glare and left the kitchen, walking as slowly as humanly possible. She was almost all the way up to the first floor when she heard her mother's voice, barely above whisper at first, but was rapidly rising into a crescendo. Pausing, conscience fought a gruesome battle with curiosity, to which conscience was mercilessly beheaded by the latter. Ino stealthily sneaked a few steps down, convinced that the shadows could hide her from Inashi's trained eyes. Her parents were sitting by the table, Siki's hands clasped tightly in Inashi's larger ones. The woman seemed to be at the verge of tears. "Iruka-sensei changed teammates," the words that flowed from Siki was punctuated with a growl, her strained voice barely audible. Ino shifted slightly to gain a better angle. "Can't believe my Ino, that demon, same team." "Demon?" Ino scowled, perking her ears to catch the words. "What demon?" She couldn't understand what her mother was talking about. It seemed as though Siki was convinced that there was a demon in the same team as the blonde girl. But that was ridiculous. Ino couldn't actually imagine Naruto or Sasuke being demons. Not the cheerful whisker face. And certainly not that brooding dark-haired boy that had rescued her from death by ditch. If Sasuke was a demon, then she certainly wouldn't be home, right? It was too far-fetched. More confused than she had ever been, Ino continued on eavesdropping. It was her father's words that caught Ino's attention. "He's not demon. The fourth sacrificed vessel, small boy. To judge him unfair. Should believe in the third." The voices were muffled after that and Ino couldn't make out anything other than she had heard. Risking a peek into the kitchen, Ino saw her father wrapping his arms around the sobbing woman in a soothing hug. Weariness was reflected clearly on Inashi's feature, like he had grown old just in a matter of minutes while they were having their conversation. Carefully treading up towards her room, the scowl on Ino's face was replaced by a worried frown. What could possibly make her usually composed mother freaked out like that? And what was that about a demon, the fourth in sacrifice? The blonde girl silently flicked off the light in her room, though she remained wide awake under the safety of her blanket. What demon? Imaginary enigmatic patterns flashing across the ceiling finally lulled Ino into a deep dreamless sleep. Chapter 2. Camaraderie. Lust. Kill. Kakashi sensei. Confiscate that dirty book of his. And then shoved those bells down his throat. The thought had occupied a major portion of Ino's mind as she scratched the back of her neck, scowling darkly at a small insect that were currently buzzing and annoying the hell out of her. She tried to swat the pest away, failed at that, but succeeded in making the leaves that were covering her bristle loudly from her wild movement. Slinking back under the shadow, Ino scanned the clearing warily for any sign of silver hair or faint chime of tiny bells. Noting that her purple clothes were not exactly a perfect blend with her green camouflage, the blonde girl exhaled in frustration. Stupid bushes. Stupid test. Stupid Kakashi sensei. Her stomach rumbled in protest. Stupid hunger. Shifting her elbows to a more comfortable angle, Ino concentrated on the task at hand, trying not to think much of amputating maiming a certain perverted sensei that clearly had a twisted sense of who should and shouldn't be a shinobi. Not only that they had to wait 3 freaking hours for Kakashi sensei to finally poof into existence, they had to hear his pathetic excuse of some lost kitten and a sneezing cow. Really? It was bad enough that he would only allow 2 of them to pass the test. That sadistic jounin also wanted them to fight him for the opportunity. Ino didn't like the direction this test was taking, frankly because she couldn't possibly choose between her 2 teammates if she was ever given the chance. Sasuke was still hiding somewhere inside the forest, while Naruto, that idiot had challenged the jounin head-on once he revealed what their test would be. As expected, Naruto got the crap kicked out of him in no time. Ino was torn between feeling amused with his stubbornness or pity the boy for his blatant idiocy after the brief display of adrenaline-driven spar. Somehow, she decided to flatter the boy and settled on the first choice. A sudden explosion jolted her out from her musing, coming from the right end of the clearing. Ino crept out from her hiding place, hesitating for a while whether or not she should follow the sound. It took the girl another resounding explosion to make up her mind, indignant squawks of birds masking the silent thuds of her sandals, which she was forced to blow dry earlier that morning, against the hard ground. When Ino arrived at the supposedly source of those explosions, she immediately found out who had been fighting and who had lost. Sasuke's scowling face, devoid of his lower-than-neck body parts, almost made Ino laugh if it wasn't for the seriousness of the situation and the fact that the person responsible for such action was there. Kakashi sensei was standing, nose slouching lazily with a hand in his pocket, his invisible nose buried inside his favorite reading material, ignoring Sasuke's hisses of bloody deaths and wetness. Ino crouched lower under a massive thicket, chewing on her much-abused lower lip as she weighed the chance she had against her sensei. Within seconds, she managed to come to a brilliant conclusion. Nil. Nope. Nah. Not a chance. If even Sasuke, Uchiha extraordinaire and top rookie of the year couldn't deliver a serious threat to the jounin, what could Ino possibly accomplish if she rushed headlong into the battlefield? Ino might not be a genius, that would be Shikamaru, but she was no blockhead. It would only be plain suicide if she tried to take on Kakashi sensei single-handedly with her level right now. Trusting her judgment, Ino decided to search for Naruto first. Maybe they could work something out against their perverted sensei, quick traps or end distractions to give either of them the opening to rescue Sasuke. The furious scream from the far distance stomped her plan to a messy death. Ino groaned, recognizing Naruto's high-pitched voice in an instant. Kakashi sensei looked up from his book with an amused twinkle in his eye before he turned to address the beheaded Uchiha. Well, seems like there's only one more to go, eh? I wonder where Ino is right now. Ino had looked away for a mere second at the distraction, but to her surprise, the silver-haired jounin had disappeared from his place beside Sasuke by the time she turned her eyes back to them. Her breath hitched at once and her eyes widened in apprehension as she wildly looked around for the jounin. Suddenly feeling very much paranoid, Ino tried frantically to search for a new hiding place, just in case Kakashi sensei had suspected her to be there. Before she could take a step back, she felt someone tapping her rigid shoulder. A part of Ino's logic told her that it couldn't be any of her teammates, seeing that one was stuck, literally, inside the ground, while another must have fallen prey into some kind of a trap Kakashi sensei had put up. Her reflex, however, prompted the blonde to turn around. The which she regrettably did. Stupid reflex. Kakashi sensei was squatting behind her, holding up a hand in greeting. His eye was curved into a cheery crescent. Yo. The blonde girl choked back a shocked yelp, drawing out her kunai and leapt away from her sensei as fast as she could. He straightened up with the patented lazy grace and followed Ino in a much more decent unpanicky pace. Ino's left eyebrow twitched, though she managed to not stumble on her feet in her haste. Working under pressure was not really her strong point, especially when she didn't have any idea how to confront a jounin. In one desperate second, Ino wished that Naruto was there, yelling and distracting Kakashi-sensei from her. She cast a sidelong glance at Sasuke, who was seething silently as a swarm of ants started harassing his vulnerable chin. The Uchiha boy glared at Ino, and she glared back, frantically sending him mental shrieks for help. At that moment, Ino learned something new about Sasuke. The boy was not physic, no matter what the rumors said. Breed. Now, Ino, Kakashi-sensei drawled out in that annoyingly lethargic voice of his, stopping just some feet away from Ino. You know what you must do, right? He gleefully patted the two dangling bells by his waist. Your other teammates have obviously failed. Gritting her teeth, Ino tightened her grip on the kunai. I can't beat you in a one-on-one match, sensei. Kakashi-sensei chuckled loudly and declared in a half-dramatic tone, at last. Someone who knows her limit. His chuckle stopped just as abruptly as it had begun, his eye hardened to adopt a near-dangerous glint. Ino felt cold shiver racing down the length of her spine. You do realize that you'll fail if you can't get the bells, don't you? The girl swallowed. Hard. Yes. But hell might as well start spewing forth ice cubes if you expect me to surrender without a fight. I think, the jounin rubbed his clothed chin in mock thoughtfulness, prolonging the silence, while he watched Ino squirming uneasily on her guard. That it's time for a break. A sudden piercing alarm screech rang throughout the forest, punctuating the jounin's offhand statement. Ino blinked in confusion. Wah. Lunch, Kakashi-sensei exclaimed happily, tucking away his dirty book and sauntered toward Sasuke, who was ruthlessly annihilating persistent soldier ants with his ravaged chin. He grinned at the frowning boy. Having fun down there? Chen. Pocketing her kunai, Ino couldn't decide if she should feel relieved or piqued at the interruption. Kakashi-sensei had been practically goading her to attack, which she would have done if it weren't for the alarm. Said sensei had seized Sasuke by the scruff of his shirt, pulling the boy effortlessly out from the ground and nonchalantly dumped him beside the Sasuke-sized hole. Crumbs of soil and bits of grass clung stubbornly onto Sasuke's clothes. His white shorts flaked with dirt. He brushed an irate hand over them, tilting his head just so his eyes could meet Ino's, daring the girl to make some kind of a snide comment over his failure. Shrugging, Ino resisted the overwhelming temptation to do so, just to annoy Sasuke and show the Uchiha that he wasn't as good as everybody thought he was. Instead, she turned on her heels and followed Kakashi-sensei, who had begun to walk away. Falling in sync with her sensei's idle strides, Ino said, I would have fought you, you know. Back then. From the corner of her eyes, she caught sight of Sasuke 10 or 11 steps behind them, the frown a permanent feature on his pale face. An amused eye peered at her, before turning its attention back to the pages from the orange book shoved underneath the covered nose. I know. Ino opened her mouth to say something, a sharp retort or a sarcastic snap at the bland reply, but found the words lost from the built-in automatic processor inside her brain. Kakashi-sensei was not mocking her. He was, as Ino grudgingly realized, acknowledging her. That mere understanding settled snugly inside her stomach, making her senses tingled with an awkward sort of appreciation. Ino closed her mouth noiselessly, almost guiltily, and allowed their brief walk to lapse in silence, except for the pleasing crunch, crunch, crunch of leaves underneath the hard soles of their ninja sandals. The warm shower of sunlight was almost completely obscured by the thick canopy of jade leaves, lonely rays impaling themselves onto the uneven floor, clusters of dried leaves and twigs snapping near unison as they made their way to the clearing. You dirty cheating perverted sensei. Let me down. They heard Naruto before they could see the blonde boy. Ino's eyes widened in astonishment when she saw a dangling Naruto shaking his fists and cussing most inappropriately at Kakashi-sensei. He was suspended in midair by a sturdy rope around his ankle, steps away from the 2 bento boxes that Kakashi-sensei had placed on a boulder before they began the test. His face was quite red, no doubt from the blood that must have rushed towards his head from Kami no how long he had been hanging like that. Kakashi snapped his book shut, a look of wicked glee in his eye as he sauntered towards Naruto, apparently turning a deaf ear at insults echoing around them. Ino winced when the jounin swiftly cut the rope with a kunai, resulting in Naruto having his head cracked against one of the many protruding tree roots. She vaguely heard Sasuke grunted in a distance. Oh. Serves you right, Kakashi crossed his arms against his vest, one visible eye pinning Naruto with an intense glare. And who's the one cheating, huh? He waved airily at the bento boxes, which were also glaring at the sheepish boy. Pushing aside the fact that bento boxes did not have eyes to manage such impressing feat. Ino tilted her head to his side as Kakashi-sensei dragged Naruto to a pole, erect in front of the boulder for a reason that was yet to be revealed. She didn't have to wait long. The jounin conjured a rope out of thin air and proceeded on to bound Naruto to the pole, with much resisting and struggling from the boy's part. Ino couldn't really blame Naruto for being uncooperative. Kakashi-sensei had made sure that the rope was tightened just below suffocating point. Done with that, the sensei gave the still struggling Naruto a good kick on the shin and gestured for Ino and Sasuke to come closer. Both complied without a word, though Ino spared Naruto a half-sympathy, half-teasing glance in her way towards Kakashi-sensei. Grumbling, the boy ignored her and made an attempt to gnaw through the rope. Because Naruto tried to cheat here, Kakashi-sensei paused and bopped said boy's head. You two are forbidden to share your food with the brat. I'll give you 30 minutes to get some rest because I have something to take care of in the academy and remember, I'm going to fail you if you offer even one grain of rice to Naruto. Got that? Ino mutely nodded, while Sasuke grunted to indicate that he was listening. Naruto was yelling something in the line of he'd kick a certain Jounin sensei's perverted ass, even if he were food deprived for a whole month. Good, the Jounin's eye curled downwards again as he shoved the 2 boxes to his rope-free charges. Jaw. And disappeared into another cloud of smoke. Lips twitching, Ino settled with her back to the boulder, taking the lid off her bento box. The Uchiha boy chose a spot not far from Ino, quickly digging into the treat like he had skipped breakfast. Oh yeah, they did. She picked up the chopsticks provided and prodded at a heap of tiny shrimps over pickled seaweeds, limp bodies of the dead sea critters non-responsive to her uncertain pokes. Besides the heap was 2 slices of half-cooked fish from an unidentified species, with one side charred beyond recognition. The clump of rice was already soggy and mushy, sprinkled with ill-sliced carrots, ginger, turnip and green sprigs. Ino grimaced as the fish crumbled under the light pressure when she attempted to pick it up. Inhaling deeply, she decided to try her luck with the shrimps instead. Chewing on the rubbery substance, Ino felt a deep longing to run back home to her mother and expressed her gratitude over Siki's delightful cooking. Thinking about her mother brought a confused frown onto Ino's feature, her jaw working in a much slower, thoughtful rate. When she woke up that morning, a heavy feeling of guilt swarmed her chest for her little disobedience act the night before and also because of the sad, almost hysteric spasm of fear she had witnessed on her mother's face. She almost regretted ever witnessing that one emotional slip from Siki. But then, before she could dwell further on the thought, plain old curiosity kicked in. Why? The one thing firmly etched onto her memory, the one thing that made her morning shower less relaxing than usual, was the repeated mentioning of a demon. One of her teammates was a demon, or so her mother seemed to believe. But her father didn't look like he shared the same belief. She only found Anashi inside the kitchen when she had ambled downstairs, declining breakfast because Kakashi-sensei had told her to, that cunning bastard. And asked for Siki. Anashi took an extra minute sipping, pondering over his coffee before telling Ino that her mother was still in bed, complaining of a migraine attack and unable to see her off. Perhaps Anashi saw the worries reflected inside Ino's blue eyes, or perhaps he just felt like being all cuddly that morning. The Jounin gave her daughter a tight, soothing hug, the one Ino remembered he gave Siki the night before. She leaned in like a leech, sucking the warmth greedily, though her mind was a haze of curiosity, confusion, curiosity, worries, curiosity. Breaking the hug, Anashi patted her back and joked that she must have gained some weight. He could barely circle his arms around her anymore like he used to. Mortified, Ino had pouted at her father and accidentally stomped down on his bare toe in her way out. Waving at a cursing and hopping Anashi, the blonde girl had thus forgot the nagging curiosity burning at the back of her brain. Until just now. One of her teammates could be a demon. If her mother's outburst held any truth, then who? Ino had been chewing on the same mouthful of rubbery shrimps and soggy rice for a good 2 minutes by then, though she was too preoccupied with her disturbing thoughts to notice. Jaw mechanically moving up and down with its own accord, Ino eyed the 2 boys intently. Sasuke was hauling, he managed to even look cool doing that. Must be practiced, rice and other things inside his mouth, slim eyebrows skewed into a frown that would have sooner or later caused permanent wrinkles on his forehead if he made frowning a habit. His dark eyes were focused on his feet, a guarded look concealing whatever there was inside those orbs. Like a wall or some sort of an obdurate facade. As if he was afraid that someone was going to look to pry into his eyes and see something there. A weakness, perhaps, underneath all those macho, high and mighty act he strutted on. An arrogant fool. Did Sasuke be the demon? She finally swallowed the finely mashed bowl down her throat, swiping her tongue over her lower lip in order to ignore the odd, nearly nauseating taste spreading out from her stomach. Despite that unpleasant sensation, Ino separated some better-looking shrimps. They're all dead anyway. Then the others, picking those shrimps and absently put them inside his reclining mouth. A small helping of rice followed afterwards, and the chewing commenced once again. Her eyes were moved to latch on Naruto, who was sulking and grumbling from Kakashi-sensei's punishment. A sudden gust of wind barely ruffled his spikes, golden sunlight highlighting the lines around each spikes, giving them some sense of an individual aesthetic value. Those blue eyes were cast downwards, though Ino couldn't actually see what they mirrored at that time. Must be anger at their sensei, or maybe even a sliver of determination. Her eyes fell on the deep whisker marks by the boy's cheeks, and Ino blinked, chopsticks askew. What did cause those scars? An accident? A fight with other boys? What? And then, Naruto's stomach chose that exact moment to grumble loudly. Ino raised her eyebrows, chewing halted to a stop as she scrutinized the embarrassment etched firmly onto Naruto's face. His cheeks were burning a deep magenta and his head hung as low as his bind allowed, muttering incoherent words under his breath. Sasuke also looked up, though he had something close to a sneer playing on his face. Ino's facial nerves worked themselves into a scowl of disapproval before she stared down at the bento box rested on her lap. At the soggy, mushy rice with garish topping. At the now scattered dead shrimps. At the crumbled remnant of charred fish. Suddenly, she didn't feel like eating anymore. But throwing them away seemed to be too much of a waste, no. Her eyes darted back to Naruto, who had ceased muttering, then down at the bento box. Fingers curled resolutely around the sharp edges. The hell with Kakashi-sensei's warning. Their teammates, damn it. Want some? Naruto whipped his head to the source of that voice, startled eyes meeting calm patient ones. "Hey. I said, do you want some?" Ino picked on the carrots. "They're awful anyway. You're only giving them to me because they're awful, huh?" The incredulous tone was not lost to Ino. Both blondes shared a chuckle together. Smothering down the small ripple of motion through his tied body, Naruto gravely shook his head and said, in an uncharacteristically low voice, "I don't want you to fail because of me. That's not fair." Ino shifted on her other foot, annoyance surfacing at the refusal. The offered bowl of rice by the tip of the chopsticks hovered dangerously close to Naruto's nostrils as she curtly snapped, "The only thing unfair here is that I have to suffer bad foods, and you're not. I bet Kakashi-sensei made them to test our endurance against poisons, most probably the deadliest ones. But you'll fail." The tone was positively miserable, guilty even by then. "Yeah, well better fail this freaking test early than having to listen to your stomach grumbling out a full orchestra by the time we're supposed to be hiding." "But what about Kakashi-sensei?" Unexpectedly, another bowl of rice and a pair of chopsticks joined the first one. "Eat up, I can't sense Kakashi's chakra anywhere near." Sasuke's cold voice cut through the air, his dark eyes narrowed and flashing some kind of a silent threat. And then, as an afterthought, he added, "Dope. Hey, who are you calling?" Naruto never did have the chance to finish the sentence, mainly because he found his throat being shoved with rice and shrimps and fish once he opened his mouth. An ambush. A sneak attack. Ino was grinning widely as she pushed in another packed bowl of rice, while Sasuke was steadily tossing shrimps into Naruto's gaped mouth with such efficiency like he had done that in his entire lifespan or as a favorite pastime activity. Naruto gagged when one of Ino's chopsticks found its way to the back of his throat, and both genins instinctively took a step back to survey their work and presumably gave Naruto the time to breath and swallow those food. The blonde boy did both at once, breathing and swallowing, and was about to say something when his eyes widened in alarm. He was looking past their shoulders. Red squeezed Ino's heart. "Don't turn back, don't turn back, don't turn back." Ino gulped and glanced over her shoulder. Sasuke doing the same. "Kakashi-sensei. You." The silver-haired Jounin was advancing towards them rapidly, a maniac fire flaming inside his visible eye, making the cobalt eyes burn with orange and red tinges. He was pointing his index finger at them, bushy silver hair wilder than ever, and he was actually doing a pretty good job in scaring the hell out of Ino. "Are going to fail. 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 Fail." Ino grinded her teeth together. "Fail. All passed. What?" Three jaws hung open. Sasuke's was not that obvious, and they gawped to Kakashi-sensei, who was beaming at them. The Jounin stood with his hands on his hip, waiting for his students to snap out of their trance-like state and cheer or demand explanation or smack him or anything. Crickets chirped, birds squawked overhead, and someone's house caught fire in the village, but the three stunned genins made no whatsoever attempt to break the silence. Ino was still wearing that dread "I'm going to fail" look on her face, bits of rice were trailing down Naruto's mouth, and Sasuke's chopsticks were slack in his nerveless fingers. Kakashi-sensei impatiently tapped his foot, the furious tap, 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 sending some kind of a coded signal to his students. Sasuke was the first one to recover his cool, closing his subtly parted lips, and growled at Kakashi-sensei. The growl worked magic in restoring his other teammates. "Kakashi-sensei, what's that supposed to mean?" Naruto yelled, spewing whatever poor morsel he didn't quite swallow yet. "I thought you said." I know, the Jounin waved the question off and sat on a dead log. He grinned at them. "Let me tell you, you're the first batch that did not follow my order. Others before you blithely ignored their teammate in favor of passing my test. But of course in the end, they didn't." Respect took roots and blossomed inside Ino for the lazy perverted sensei before her, as the jounin began relating the importance of teammates in missions and such. She had also sat down to listen, the forgotten bento box lying near her crossed legs. Once, Kakashi sensei actually looked her way and winked before resuming his ranting. Ino felt the corner of her mouth curved upwards and she sneaked a glance at Naruto. The blonde boy was listening to Kakashi sensei in apt attention, the trace of earlier indignation replaced by one of fascination. Even though he was tied to a pole, Ino could still felt iron-wrought determination radiating from the boy. The jounin's words weaved in and out with her thoughts, attention divided to listening and watching. Sasuke was taking in the explanation like he had known them all along, his face a canvas of perpetual aloofness. Smiling to herself, Ino shook her head. Her teammates could not be a demon. Not those two. She rubbed the pad of her thumb over her knuckles, forcing her mind to peel itself away from that subject. Kakashi sensei had done talking and was beaming at them once again. I have to go now and I want to meet the three of you tomorrow morning, same time, same place. Don't be late. Look who's talking, Ino chided sarcastically, earning her a grin from Kakashi sensei. She grinned back and stood up, brushing dirt and dried leaves off the back of her purple skirt. The silver-haired jounin freed Naruto from the bind, waved a hand and disappeared in a blink of an eye. Again. Naruto shook his numb limbs, the grin on the boy's face too wide to ignore. Kakashi sensei might be one perverted teacher, but he sure is cool. How about we celebrate over some ramen? Ino proposed, looking down at the bento box. Images of Ichiraku's edible treat made her kick the box away, watching it toppled and leftover scrap spilling onto green grass. Naruto whooped and punched the air. Alright. I can't wait to tell Iruka sensei about this. Sasuke was starting to walk away, as usual. Ino narrowed her eyes, annoyed at the knowledge that the Uchiha always declined get-togethers or parties, everything that involved mingling with other people. Even while they were in the academy, Sasuke would be missing if there were commotions and general social events. Sure, what with his traumatic childhood, the Uchiha massacre and all that soap opera-worthy experience, anyone couldn't really blame the boy if he wanted to be all detached and cold towards people. But really, a little meal with his teammates couldn't have been that much of a burden, right? And if they were going to be stuck and working together in the future, might as well start the bonding thing right away. But that resolution firm in mind, Ino briskly walked up to Sasuke and gripped the boy's shoulder. Sasuke spared her a death glare. Let go. No. What do you want? He moved his shoulder sharply away from Ino's fingernails and turned to face Ino, glaring. The blonde girl, stubborn as she was, didn't even flinch. Naruto and I are going to Ichiraku and you are coming with us. Boy, Ino-chan, whatcha doing? Naruto's ecstatic voice came from somewhere behind her. Ichiraku's waiting for us. Wait a sec, Ino flashed Naruto a grin, which morphed into a small, strained smile when she looked at Sasuke. Come on, it won't kill you. Chen. We're teammates now, you know. We need to work together. Her patience was stretching to its limit and Ino didn't know how long she could speak civilly to this obstinate boy before she resorted to yelling. Yelling at Sasuke won't be pretty picture. And like Kakashi sensei said, it's all about teamwork. I'm not asking you to join a slumber party in Naruto's house or something like that. Just a bowl of ramen. Please. Sasuke looked like he was going to grunt and stalk away, but to Ino's surprise, he simply heaved an almost exasperated sigh and muttered, just one bowl. That's good enough, Ino chirped, clapping her hands together in satisfaction. Ha, even Mr. Ice Block Uchiha had to succumb to her charm. Unconsciously, Ino grabbed Sasuke's hand, like she had often did to Shikamaru every time she dragged the lazy boy to practice. She completely missed a brief shock on the pale face, bounding energetically towards the waiting Naruto. Last one to the stands impotent. And then, I told Iruka sensei that if he couldn't get a date to the ball, I'll use my sexy no jutsu and be his date. He got all panicked because he didn't want some nude girl tailing him around. Ino sniggered, choking on her noodle. So did he get a date after that? Yeah, some chewin' woman with this huge boil on her right cheek and really funny nose. Like a swollen pear, Naruto cackled again, settling his empty bowl on the wooden counter. He couldn't say no, you know, cause he have to go to the ball and he have to bring a date. Iruka sensei called in sick last minute but I saw him hiding every time he sees the chewin' woman. Poor Iruka sensei, the girl chortled, shoulders shaking with laughter. And to think I had a massive crush on him when I first saw him in the academy. She sighed at the fond memory. When Ino realized that Naruto was gaping at her, she shrugged. Hey, he's cute, okay? I couldn't help it. I was, 8 years old at that time? Chen. Sasuke, no grunting while eating, Ino teasingly admonished the Uchiha, grinning over the rim of her bowl at him. Sasuke was still on his first and only bowl, methodically picking on the strips of fried chicken, then the shrimps, healthy dead ones this time, and lastly, the coiled noodle. It was as if he was meditating over his ramen. Naruto stacked his fifth bowl onto the others and said, "Are you ever going to finish eating, Sasuke bastard?" "Shut up, dope," snarled the dark-haired boy and picked on his shrimps. And then, his noodle. "Meticulous, I'm telling you." "Leave the guy alone, Naruto," Ino interjected, cutting Naruto halfway through his impending outburst. She fished some notes and coins, tossing them onto the counter. Raising an eyebrow at the blonde boy, Ino asked, "Are you done?" Naruto wiped his mouth with the sleeve of his orange jumper, glowering slightly at Sasuke. "Yeah, why?" "You said you want to meet Iruka-sensei," Naruto nodded. "I want to tag along. It's been quite a while since I met sensei." "Sure," he slipped off the stool and placed some crumpled notes on Ino once. Jerking his chin at Sasuke, who was by then picking on his chicken strips, Naruto said, "What about mute guy over there?" Ino whapped the back of Naruto's head. "I'm sure he knows his way home. If he doesn't, he can always sleep in the park. They have enough benches." Sasuke actually looked up at that and death glared Ino. "Yosh, let's go." "Naruto, look out for that." "Oh. Branch. You really are an idiot, aren't you?" Grumble grumble grumble. "I heard that, whisker face." TBC. Chapter 3. Zephyr. "Can we stop at my apartment first?" Naruto asked, tugging uneasily at the end of his orange jumper. "I need to pick up some scrolls I borrowed from Iruka-sensei." Ino shrugged and winked at the blonde. "Sure. You don't mind inviting me in for a glass of juice or something, right?" She arched an eyebrow when Naruto's shoulders sagged noticeably. "What?" "Nothing," the reply was too quick to be honest, but Ino said nothing, acting as if she didn't notice the uncomfortable twitches of the boy's mouth. She figured that maybe Naruto would tell her when he felt like it. Or she could throttle it out of him later. The street was becoming increasingly narrow as they walked in silence, dirty brick wall ornamented by various colorful graffiti circling ill-kept apartment complexes coming into view, and small urchins running after one another with happy shrieks and yells. Their mothers were sitting, smiling and chatting to one another on worn benches under the shadows of old twisted trees as they watched their children indulged in childish games. One small boy tripped on a stray pebble, stumbling onto the dusty ground with a cry. His mother scrambled to his side in an instant, cooing and crooning soothing nonsense, until the boy's cries was reduced to hiccups and sobs. His friends clustered around him, waiting for the boy to get on his feet and back to their game. Ino was surprised when she glanced at Naruto. The eyes that used to sparkle mischievously were staring at the sobbing kid and the middle-aged woman in envy, a gleam of sadness and pure loneliness permeating those sky-bluer eyes. Ino's heart ached painfully at the sight. Ino wanted so badly to come up a witty remark, whap the back of Naruto's head, or argue about something ridiculous until their throats run dry, just so she could bring that annoyingly cocky grin back, or to hear the boy yelling in irritation at her. Sadness really didn't suit Naruto at all. It dulled his eyes horribly, and for a split second, it was as though it was not Naruto who walked beside her at that time. Not the cheerful, hyperactive Naruto that she knew. Instead of all that, Ino couldn't bring herself to do anything. Her hands hung strangely limp by her side, guilt seeping slowly into her conscience for seeing something that she should not see. Like she had pried into Naruto's deepest secret without his consent. The small boy had already jumped onto his feet, crowded by his noisy friends before they ran to another place, to play another game. Ino tucked a few strands of hair that had escaped her ponytail behind her ears, words failing the girl for the first time. "My place is on the third floor," Naruto suddenly spoke up, and Ino realized that they had stopped in front of one apartment complex. It was shabby and tattered with rusty set of gates that creaked loudly when Naruto pushed them open, the once cream-painted wall chipped in places, and tired-looking shrubbery struggled to continue blooming on the barren ground. Laundry swayed on weary lines from numerous balconies, the wind carrying voices and other unidentified noises to surround the two genins. Several women scurried around those balconies, scooping random objects or clothes before hurrying into their apartments when shrill cries or yelling started to resound inside. The pain constricting Ino's heart hardened, intensified by a hundredfold. Naruto lived here. She glanced at the blonde boy, whose eyes were no longer supporting the sad look but were carefully cheerful. As if Ino had only imagined his reaction before. She clenched her fists, the muscle of her face taut into a grimace. Naruto led her to one side of the complex, where poorly trimmed hedges bordered the sidewalk and cluttered debris and litters lay forgotten on the pavement. The stairs were in similar state of neglect, and as they mounted it, Ino wrinkled her nose when a repugnant smell assaulted her nostrils, some kind of a mix of day-old puke and overcooked cabbages. There were people yelling above them, before the yell eventually died down once they arrived at the landing. Two elderly women were facing each other, their thin lips twisting into sneers of plain disgust and hatred as their tiny, watery eyes glared at Naruto under wide eyebrows. One of them, who wore an oversized nightgown with flamboyant flower patterns, actually spat onto the filthy floor and with a last glare directed to Naruto, retreated into the confinement of her grimy apartment and slammed the door shut. The other woman mirrored her friend's action with an even louder slam. Ino blinked in complete disorientation and turned to Naruto for an explanation, only to find the boy fumbling with his keys. Naruto inserted one key into the keyhole, turning it and twisted the doorknob without leaving his eyes off the door. Finally looking up to grin at the dumbfounded Ino, Naruto exclaimed, "Are you going to come in or do you want to wait outside?" "In, I guess," Ino pushed the curiosity that was again nagging at her to the back of her brain, slipping off her ninja sandals at the entrance. She placed them beside Naruto's and allowed her eyes to roam around Naruto's small apartment. There was not much inside. Literally. The room was no bigger than the living room in her house, acting as both living room and bedroom at the same time. A battered table stood in the middle of the room, its smooth surface marred by burn marks and some deep scratches. Chairs were two sad little stools, assembled around the table like faithful companions that had seen better days. There was an unmade bed pushed to one corner of the apartment, the lumpy mattress and pillow covered in worn casings. The trunk sat close to the end of the bed and there was a yellowish-white shirt spilling out from its open depth. Ino winced when her bare feet made contact with something solid, bending down as she retrieved an empty instant ramen bowl. Dropping that onto the table, the girl made her way to the window, its blurry glass seemed to have never been introduced to a clean rug and water. Looking out, Ino could make out some kids running around a dying tree, their cheerful yells making the air inside the apartment gloomier than before. How could Naruto live in this place? Soft footsteps snapped Ino back from his dark musing. "Sorry if it's a bit messy," Naruto's voice was laced with awkwardness and he placed one of his palms on the windowsill. Ino drew away from the window, sucking in a deep calming breath and turned to stare at her teammate. Naruto had several scrolls clutched to his chest as he continued grinning at the girl. Too lazy to clean up. At that very moment, Ino realized that Naruto, the strong, ridiculously stubborn Naruto needed a friend and not her pity. That made Ino kick herself repeatedly, in her mind, that is. She placed her hands on her hip and scowled in mock anger. "You're not going to be lazy around me, whisker face. We got so much thing to do from now on." "We?" the boy questioned skeptically. "Your place," Ino flailed her arm in exasperation, "need a complete makeover as well as a thorough cleaning. And lucky you, I'm free this weekend." Naruto's jaw, if it was physically possible, hit the floor. "What? We're cleaning your house this weekend, whisker face. But why?" "Because you're living in a dump, that's why." "My house is not a dump." "What, you're expecting me to believe that when I found empty ramen bowls on your floor?" Said empty instant ramen bowl bounced off Naruto's forehead. "But I hate cleaning." "That's why you need someone to order around your lazy ass for you. Are you cleaning your soul for heaven or something?" "No, because I'm cleaning this hell instead." "Whose place are you calling hell?" "Stop whining like a brat, whisker face, and start being responsible for once." I. Not another word," narrowing her eyes dangerously, Ino snatched half of the scrolls from Naruto's hand and stomped to the door. "I'll come this weekend and you better have some good excuse if I find more trash at that time. I'll skewer you using a mop if you don't." Naruto caught up with Ino as she was putting on her sandals, his blue eyes flashing with annoyance. "I don't need you cleaning my home. I can do it myself." The blonde girl gave Naruto a measuring look and snorted. "I doubt that. When was the last time you did laundry, Naruto?" The boy scratched the back of his head, a sheepish grin, replacing the furious snarl on his face. "Last week." Ino sighed and shook her head. "My point exactly. Cut the crap and let's go to Iruka sensei's place. I need to be somewhere tidy again to cleanse my poor eyes." She did a dramatic gesture of fussing over her eyes for emphasis. Naruto indignantly HMPH'd and locked his apartment when they had stepped out. Ino found herself relaxing slightly when the two elderly women that had glared at Naruto were not there, though it puzzled her of why they had shown blatant hatred towards the boy. Like he carried a contagious disease or something. And why the blonde boy acted as though he was used to the treatment. Naruto had bounced down the stairs and Ino, cursing because the blonde boy had abandoned her alone in the hallway, raced down instantly and conveniently forgot her disconcerting thought. For one thing, Naruto was as fast as he was loud and before long, Ino wished that she had had the heart to throw kunai at the blur of orange in front of her. They had escaped the area and took a shortcut to the other side of Konoha, where Iruka sensei resided near the academy. Ino eventually stopped running in favor of walking, huffing and wiping beads of sweat from her glistening forehead. Fleetingly, Ino wondered where the heck Naruto got the stamina to keep going and going like there's no tomorrow, but quickly decided that it must be from all those ramen that he ate. Gluttonous whisker face. Naruto, to his credit, had also slowed down when he could sense Ino's rage dissipating behind him. Scrolls a careless display in his lax arms, the boy fell into a much decent pace besides Ino, grinning in smug victory at the panting girl. She raised a hand and punched Naruto's shoulder playfully, saying nothing since she was still trying to even out her breathing from the strenuous activity. If running after a loud brat could be called strenuous activity, that is. Naruto grinned, shifting the light weight he was carrying to rest more comfortably against his chest. The buildings around them had morphed from simple architecture to those with slightly artistic touch, delicate carvings of mythical animals decorating several pillars and wooden poles that they walked past without a second glance. Nice neighborhood, Ino commented, admiring the neat lines of shady trees along the paved road. The pleasant scent of post-winter invited a smile onto the girl's face as she balanced the scrolls in her hands. Yeah, Iruka-sensei don't have any girlfriend, so he used his money spoiling himself, Naruto quipped, chuckling to himself. Ino frowned at the remark. Are you trying to imply that having a girlfriend is costly? An impish grin widened on Naruto's face. He pretended to nod thoughtfully. Of course. Guys have to pay whenever they went to a date, right? And have to buy gifts and all that shit for their girls. Flowers, chocolate. Baka. That's not compulsory, tittered the girl, brushing her bang from her eyes as she glared incredulously at Naruto. Who told you that? Sakura-chan. I asked her out for a date once and she told me that I couldn't possibly afford it. Then I asked why not, a pout begun forming at the memory, cheeks puffing up in aggravation. And she tells me that she would love to eat in a classy restaurant with dear Sasuke-kun if she ever went on a date. Ino chuckled in amusement. Well, that's Sakura to you. To me, if you bring me to Ichiraku and we eat ramen, as long as we had a good time and enjoy ourselves, then it's loads better than eating in an expensive restaurant with a conversationally deprived pretty boy. The laugh escaped Naruto's lips at the honest confession. Ha, that's because you're cheap. Hey. Ino exclaimed indignantly, hurt by the accusation. She couldn't whap Naruto like she intended to do as her arms were taken into custody by the rebellious scrolls. Besides, the blonde boy had had the foresight to run a few steps ahead of Ino. Sorry, choking back his laughter, Naruto winked at Ino over his shoulder before laughing again. But it does seem more convenient to bring you out for a date, nah, cheapskate. Shut up, growled Ino, regretting ever saying anything to Naruto. The blonde boy had the tendency to annoy people even if he didn't mean it. Maybe that could be his bloodline limit. Annoying people to death no jutsu. Ino mentally snickered at the thought, half jogging to keep up with Naruto. 2 shortcuts and 3 bickering later, both genins finally arrived in front of a door marked with the number 13. Iruka-sensei's apartment was everything that Ino had imagined it would be. Clean, neat, spotless and awfully immaculate. The whole setting practically screamed teacher. To the eyes of visitors. The brown-haired teacher, who was wearing a dark blue sweater and faded gray sweatpants, greeted them with a surprised smile. The smile mostly directed at the grinning Ino besides Naruto. He ushered the two in, gathering the scrolls from his 2 former students and stacked them systematically in different boxes on a working table just besides a small aquarium. Inside the aquarium were 2 small goldfishes, smaller than usual ones, swimming around contentedly inside the glass confine. There were also potted plants on the windowsill, young leaves resting softly on the dark maroon pots. Sit down, ordered Iruka-sensei, waving them towards a comfortable-looking couch by the wall. He moved the papers he had been grading before they came onto another table and stared intently at the 2 genins. Do you want anything to drink, Ino? Naruto usually have hot chocolate when he comes here. Water will be fine, sensei, Ino answered politely, smiling at the young chunin. Iruka-sensei nodded and disappeared into a hallway, presumably leading him to the kitchen. Naruto left the couch to squat in front of the cabinet underneath the television set, opening it and pulling out a rectangular green box. He rummaged around for something and came out with another box, this one a square and a lot smaller than the first, though it shared the same dusty green color. He grinned cheekily, 2 boxes in hand and bounced towards Ino, who was curiously craning her neck at the blonde boy. When Naruto set the boxes on the table before them, Ino realized with a jolt of surprise that it was Scrabble. She blinked and arched an eyebrow at the boy. Scrabble? Ino asked, just to make sure that her eyes were not deceiving her. Naruto was the last person in Konoha that she would imagine being interested in a game of words. The grin widened. Why, afraid that you're going to lose? Are you challenging me, whisker face? Careful, Ino-san. Naruto is not as illiterate as people expected him to be, came a jovial voice from their right. Iruka-sensei was leaning against the wall, a gentle smile gracing his lips. In his hands was a tray supporting 3 mugs with distinctive kunai and shuriken patterns. He crossed the room in 3 strides, placing the tray on the parquet floor and sat cross-legged besides Naruto. Ruffling the boy's hair, Iruka-sensei joked, there's a good brain underneath all his brashness. Iruka-sensei, whined Naruto, pouting at the chunin. I wouldn't have guessed, Ino gleefully teased, deftly avoiding a Scrabble piece aimed towards her forehead by a certain pouting blonde. She settled on the floor too, grinning like a Cheshire cat. Bring it on. The pieces were enthusiastically jumbled and soon, there were only faint sighs and thoughtful hum residing in the room. Ino and Naruto glared at each other over the edge of their tables, almost similar blue eyes twinkling with confidence. At one side, Iruka-sensei sat forgotten with his own table, eyeing his former students with a whimsical smile on his tanned face. The academy teacher started the game with the word "friend" boldly placed in the middle of the board. Ino frowned, slender fingers hovering above her own pieces. A grin surfaced and she countered with a dumb, smirking at Naruto. Perhaps sensing that the word were meant for him, Naruto shot Ino a glare before rearranging his pieces on his table. 2 seconds later, he came up with a blonde. Iruka-sensei openly chuckled at that. The game was fast and furious, mostly because Naruto and Ino kept glaring, and Iruka-sensei kept chuckling at the childish competitiveness between the two teammates. Glorious sunlight that poured into the room from the open sliding door by the balcony had dimmed considerably as the great orange ball sunk slowly into the far horizon, early stars winking in a distance. Too absorbed in their little game, none of the three ninja realized this until Iruka-sensei looked up to massage his sore neck, only to stare into the settling darkness. The Chunin gasped and glanced at the clock hung on his wall. Approximately 10 minutes past 7. Iruka-sensei had to cough extra hard to attract the genin's attention. It's well past sunset, the teacher declared, his eyes particularly set on a groaning Ino. Your parents will be worried if you don't come home for dinner, Ino-san. Naruto immediately protested. But Iruka-sensei, can't Ino just have dinner with us? She has to taste your ramen. Well, I have no objection about that, Iruka-sensei replied, smiling again. To Ino, he said, I can call Inoshi-san and explain to him if you want to stay for dinner. I'm sure he will give his permission. Are you sure I'm not interrupting anything? Ino demurely asked, a barely concealed hope shining in her eyes. Iruka-sensei laughed and shook his head. Of course not. How about you help Naruto clean up and I'll call Inoshi-san, okay? Cleaning up consisted of hunting for numerous missing pieces of alphabets that they had thrown at each other during their game. Most of them ended up in odd nooks and crannies. Okay. Came the chorused agreement and 2 pairs of feet scrambled to work almost immediately. Watching the two squabbled again, Iruka-sensei picked up his phone and made the call from his kitchen. Inoshi was the one who picked it up. Good evening, Inoshi-san, the Chunin greeted cordially. Iruka-sensei, came the warm retort. May I ask why you're calling at this time? Is there something wrong in the academy? No, this is purely personal. I want to inform you that Ino had spent her evening in my company and I asked her to stay for dinner. I'm hoping that you and Siki-san won't mind lending her for tonight. He couldn't help the formality, simply because he felt respect for those with higher ranking than his. And Inoshi was an experienced jounin, after all. A short pause came from the other end, as if the jounin was contemplating something. Then, Inoshi's voice vibrated again, with a question, is Ino with that Uzumaki kid? It was Iruka-sensei's turn to stiffen. Yes. He inhaled deeply and forced himself to loosen his tight grip on the phone. Is there a problem, Inoshi-san? Don't get me wrong, sensei, the voice was thick with hesitation. But Siki, she's not really happy with the arrangement of teams. Her father died while protecting Konoha from the great demon. And I'm sure Yashinaga-sama was a fine shinobi, the Chunin curtly acknowledged, his grip tightening once again, a contrast to his softening voice. My parents also sacrificed themselves for the safety of Konoha, Inoshi-san. I don't mean to sound rude, but Naruto is nothing but a boy. A boy with a dream, a future to mold with his own hands. What he needs is a chance and a friend. Ino accepts him the way he is, and she should be the one to judge her friends, not others. I'm proud with her in that way, Inoshi-san. You should be too. A longer pause greeted the academy teacher after that. Iruka-sensei was starting to fidget on his feet when Inoshi spoke up again, my sincerest apology, sensei. I'll talk to Siki about this. Tell Ino to enjoy the dinner and thank you for having my daughter there. I'll tell her that, Inoshi-san. Thank you. A silent click resounded from the other line and the tan Chunin stared at the phone in his hand before placing it on top of the refrigerator. He traced his steps back to the living room, raising one fine eyebrow when he found out that instead of searching for the missing alphabets, Naruto and Ino were curiously tapping the glass of his aquarium, agitating his goldfishes into completing faster circles around the aquarium. The Scrabble boxes were still on the table, the lids thrown carelessly aside, while some pieces lay cluttered on the heavily polished surface. Both looked up when Iruka coughed deliberately with the same guilty look on their faces, like they had just been caught doing something illegal. Naruto offered the Chunin sensei a goofy grin, while Ino plastered a lopsided grin on her feature. They needed exercise, Naruto begun, pointing at the goldfishes. Ino nodded on cue. They kept going on and on slowly. We thought we'd make them go faster. Like an exercise, you know. How have you found all the pieces? Iruka-sensei had to suppress a snicker when the two genins exchanged uncomfortable glances. I'll give you 10 more minutes. One piece missing, even 1 minute after that, we're going to eat plain soba tonight. But sensei. It was actually cute to see the two of them whining in complete unison, but the tan Chunin steeled his expression. Don't you but, sensei me. 10 minutes, genins, from now. Naruto instantly launched himself to the back of the couch, and Ino got on her knees, groping underneath the table and cabinets. Iruka-sensei grinned inwardly, crossing his arms against his sweater-clad chest, and waited for his former students to complete their current mission one by one. The missing piece turned out, piled into a small hill on the table by quick hands. Naruto and Ino covered the whole place with only 1 minute left to go, and as they put the boxes back into their place, they grinned expectantly at Iruka-sensei. Nice work, the teacher softly praised and led the genins into his kitchen. He fetched 2 spare aprons from a cupboard, tossing them to Naruto and Ino, tying one around his form. Reaching for the biggest pot he had in the kitchen, Iruka-sensei began listing out the works they had to do in order to prepare their dinner. Naruto, I want you to get the tofu and vegetables from the fridge, careful not to cut your fingers with the knife like last time. And Ino-san. Ino, the girl defiantly corrected. Right, Ino, Iruka-sensei smiled as he said that, I have some chicken over there. Do you mind skinning them? Seizing a gleaming knife from the counter, Ino shook her head and practically attacked the poor chicken. Do you want to save the skin? I'll deep fry them later. The Chunin filled water into the pot and placed them on the stove, picking up carrots, a knife and a chopping board to occupy his time while he waited for the water to boil. He spared a glance at Naruto, who was happily slicing the tofu into perfect cubes. Hand me the noodles packets, will you, Naruto? Hi. Iruka-sensei, can I do the frying part? Sure, Ino. Naruto. Not the cabbage. Sensei, I'm done. Ino, grab the flour from that cabinet. No, the third one to your right. Arg. I'm bleeding. Baka, what the heck did you do with that knife? Naruto, put your hand under the water. Ino, please fetch the medical kit in the bathroom. 2 doors to your left. I'm going to die. Oh, shut up, Naruto. Iruka-sensei, where's the medical kit? Under the sink. Naruto, keep your hand under the tap. Really, I warned you already. Here, sensei. How did you manage to mistake your wrist for the frickin' lettuce? Something must wrong with your eyes, whisker face. Ino, please stop yelling at Naruto. Now, let me look at that cut, Naruto. Did that wound just close by itself? Huh? Iruka-sensei, I thought it must have been a deep gash or something. The two of you, not another word. Let me dress your wound, Naruto. Oh, my. The noodles. I'll patch him up, Ino offered, taking the roll of gauze from Iruka-sensei's hand. The Chunin flashed her a grateful grin and dashed off to tend his neglected noodles. She wiped a smudge of flour from her cheek, only to have it trailed across her sweaty face. Wrapping Naruto's wrist with much efficiency from daily practice, Ino muttered darkly, someone should forbid stupid whisker faces from using knives. Naruto bristled, as expected. It's not my fault. It was the knife's. Now you've moved up a notch and starts blaming inanimate objects for your stupidity, huh? Her words might be harsh, but Ino meant well with every single one of them. She fastened the end neatly and glared at Naruto. Won't it be funny to have the future Hokage killed inside his own kitchen, with his own kitchen knife sticking out of his hand? Yes, you're right, Naruto scratched the back of his head, an embarrassed grin on his face. He patted his bandaged wrist affectionately. Thanks, Ino. Be careful, will you? The girl's voice was gentler than usual when she said this, dusting her hands together. There was something akin to a sad glimmer in her eyes. You're not indestructible, Naruto. Be nice to yourself. Even if others don't, Ino inwardly continued. An awkward smile tugged Naruto's lips, faint dusty pink smearing his cheeks. Iruka-sensei, as always, came to his rescue. Cooking chopsticks in one hand, the Chunin said, why don't you set the table, Naruto? Ino will help me with the rest, nah. I'm afraid that I can't trust you with my knife anymore. A dignified yelp escaped Naruto's throat when Iruka-sensei shoved him towards the living room before he stomped to one cupboard and pulled put bowls and such. Casting a last glance over his shoulder at the Chunin and girl inside the kitchen, Naruto sighed heavily and trotted to finish his given task. Ino blinked, looking up at the smiling face of her former sensei. Iruka-sensei dimpled down at her, handing the girl the cooking chopsticks and pointed at a wok on the stove, besides the boiling pot of ramen. Stirring the sizzling rice inside the wok, Ino kept sneaking glances towards the general direction of the living room, where she caught glimpses of Naruto placing small bowls and glasses on the table, a tuneless whistle flowing jauntily from his lips. He seemed absorbed in his work and had quite forgotten their little spat before. Involuntarily, Ino felt her mouth curved into a relieved smile. Ino. The blonde girl snapped to face Iruka-sensei with a start. Eyes, sensei. What do you think about Naruto? The Chunin's face was devoid of any expression when Ino peered questioningly at him, his warm brown eyes trained on the cucumber he was slicing through. Ino moved her eyes to the wok before her. Anu. The truth, please. I won't mind if you condemn him. He's stubborn and stupid, came the resolute retort. But before Iruka-sensei could respond to that, Ino continued, but I like his stubbornness and his stupidity. Sure, why he wants to be a Hokage is beyond me, but if he needs any help, I'll be there for him. That's what friends are for, right? Much to her surprise, Iruka-sensei laughed at her answer. He finally turned to look straight into Ino's eyes, and she could clearly discern the approval in those liquid chocolate orbs. Well said, Ino. I think you'll make a good shinobi in the future. Thanks, I guess. The direction of their conversation was more than a little ambiguous to Ino, but it did felt good to be praised by a teacher. She gave the rice one last stir before putting out the flickering flames and dumped the sweet-smelling fried rice into an oval-shaped salver. You want me to do anything else, Iruka-sensei? I'm almost done. The Chunin began topping 3 bowls under his ministration with chopped mushrooms. He juggled them to a tray before opening a small drawer and drew out a teapot. I'll make some tea and you can bring the food to the table. Make sure that Naruto didn't get his hands on the ramen first, okay? Or we won't have enough to feed ourselves. Ino laughed and saluted. The table was ready when she ambled into the living room with the extra weight in her hands, and by the precision of the whole setting, from the perfect angle of the chopsticks to the laid crispy white hand napkins, the girl had a feeling that Naruto had done it often enough for him to develop a sense of tidiness. Iruka-sensei truly was a miracle worker. Ino placed the bowls in place, swatting one eager hand away when she had finished doing so, and threatened Naruto that she would force-feed him steamed Brussels sprouts if he make another attempt to start eating without Iruka-sensei. That earned her an earful of grumbles and dark mutters. Said Chunin teacher arrived about 5 minutes later, another tray in hand, and he allowed Ino to pour them each a cup of hot tea. Dinner was a noisy affair. Naruto relating the test Kakashi-sensei had forced upon them that morning, with Ino snapping consistently at him when he exaggerated some details, confused facts with his fantasy and overall, made him look like an ass-kicking genin that he wasn't. Yet. Iruka-sensei laughed when a more than small amount of wasabi mysteriously ended up in Naruto's bowl, Ino trying to convince them amidst Naruto's yell for water that it was an accident. If he hadn't seen the girl purposely squeeze the wasabi into the bowl while Naruto was doing some excited gestures with his hands, maybe Iruka-sensei would have believed her. He suppressed a fresh bout of chuckles at the innocent face Ino had put on when Naruto confronted her, the blonde boy's face as red as a lobster and his tongue sticking out between his swollen lips. By 10 o'clock, both genins were bowing and thanking Iruka-sensei for an interesting afternoon and a nice dinner. The Chunin even invited Ino to spend her free time with them, playfully stating that Naruto and her still had a dispute to settle over certain words that Naruto swore existed and listed in the dictionary, ignoring the girl's protest when he paved on ahead with those words, even if Iruka-sensei had produced a dictionary and looked them up in a veil. Naruto had volunteered to walk Ino back home, walking in comfortable silence besides the girl as they passed the lines of trees in their way out from the neighborhood. It was full moon that night, the silver shower of ethereal light made everything shone in a fey fashion. The streets were fairly deserted, some late shoppers and few drunkards were the only people that the genins came across. Reaching the Yamanaka flower shop, both paused on track. Thanks Naruto. I had a great time, Ino said, grinning. Naruto conceded with a wide grin of his own. I had fun too. Maybe we should do this more often. Yeah, opening the side door of the shop, Ino stopped and gave Naruto a mischievous wink. Remember that we've got some cleaning to do this weekend, whisker face. The blonde boy put both hands to the back of his head and laughed. I'll Maki in a Forto remember that, Ino-chan. See you tomorrow and good night. Night, came the reply. Chapter 4. Andante. Ino placed her sandals on the footwear rack, sighing as fatigue finally wormed its way into her system after all the excitement. The day had been a rough one, both mentally and physically. Yawning, Ino rubbed her knuckles over her eyes, yearning for a hot bath to wash away the collected sweat and her comfortable bed to sleep away the weariness. And to think that they had another meeting tomorrow morning. Well, Kakashi-sensei better be early for once and not planning anything downright sadistic again this time, she thought wryly. The girl was fairly surprised to see her parents sitting by the dining table when she pushed the back door open, as if they were waiting for her. Suppressing another yawn, Ino ambled in and closed the door behind her softly. I'm home, Ino unnecessarily announced, unnecessary being that Anashi and Siki had turned towards her direction when she had first opened the door. Her mother had a gaunt expression on her lovely face. Her cheeks slightly flushed and had dry trails that looked suspiciously like tears running down her face. Inashi, face unnaturally impassive, raised his hand to greet Ino. Smiling tiredly, the girl joked, "Are we having a family meeting now? Cause it won't do to wake up our neighbors if mom starts throwing plates at dad like the last time." Inashi laughed at that, though it sounded oddly strained to Ino's ears, and she caught the fleeting glance the Jounin spared toward Siki. The blonde girl frowned and despite wishing that she could just go upstairs, had her shower and snuggled into Mr. Snuffles, Ino found herself pulling back a chair, the sound of scraping of wood against tiles, breaking the silence inside the space. Her mother's manicured fingers were curled tightly around a mug, pensively staring into the dark, swirling depth of the coffee without a word. Ino had no idea of what had gone wrong between her parents, but somehow, she felt like it had something to do with her, one way or another. If not, they would have gone to bed and sulked at each other for the rest of the week, instead of waiting for her. Was her mother still upset over her decision to become a ninja? Or was she dissatisfied over her achievements? Ino, her father's even voice snapped Ino out of her short trance. She tilted her head up to meet the Jounin's eyes. "How was your dinner at Iruka-sensei's house?" The grin eased its way onto Ino's supple lips. "It was great. We played Scrabble before that. Naruto cheated tons of times, and I helped Iruka-sensei with the ramen and rice. He's a really good cook." She glanced at Siki and hastily added, "But not as good as mom, of course." Siki's grip on her mug tightened noticeably. Her father nodded, albeit distractedly. Then, he squared his shoulder and scratched the back of his right ear, an impulsive reaction that he did every time he was hesitating about something. "And this Naruto, what do you think about him?" There was something in the tone of Inashi's voice that made Ino sharply look away from her mother and stared at the Jounin. That was the second time someone asked her what she thought of Naruto. Her curiosity was kicking in again, full force. "Why?" Inashi scratched the back of his ear again and asked, "Why what?" "Iruka-sensei asked me the same thing," the girl revealed, her eyes narrowed to slits in suspicion. She drummed her fingers against the wooden surface of the table, waiting. "Is there something you're not telling me, Dad?" "We are just concerned, about your teammates," came the stammered reply, and Inashi was practically clawing at his ear by then. He was never a decent liar to begin with, and Siki, the better one between them, was not helping at all. The Jounin sneaked another glance at his unresponsive wife and groaned inwardly. Deciding that the sooner this interrogation end, the earlier she could escape into her room, Ino impatiently said, "Naruto's stubborn and stupid. Sasuke's cold and annoying. Can I please go now? I'm so tired and we have this meeting tomorrow morning and I'm dead sure that Kakashi-sensei will be late again." She was whining, but Ino was beyond care. "Shower and bed. Shower and bed. Now. Do you like the Uzumaki boy, Ino?" Ino blinked at the question, impatience swallowed by the insistence in her mother's voice. There was the hidden urgency, the need to know her answer that overwhelmed Ino. What is it with everyone and Naruto? "Yeah, he's okay. At least he's not brooding and angsting around like Sasuke." "You like him even though he's stubborn and stupid?" Siki's tone was flat, persistent and flat. It was starting to unnerve the blonde girl. Her mother never used that kind of tone before, not even in her worst temper. And she would rather face a yelling Siki with plates in hand than this kinda silent Siki if she were given an option. And because she hadn't been given an option, the girl had to think fast. "Naruto always tries his hardest, really," Ino finally said, earnestly. "He told me he failed the Genin exam 3 times before he passed. And I don't know why but almost everyone seems to hate him. He's a really nice person when he's not yelling or complaining about my vegetarian ramen. Or calling Sasuke names, but that's unavoidable. And there were these 2 old hags at his apartment. You won't believe how horrible his apartment is. It's old and smelly and she trailed on, remembering her promise to clean said apartment that coming weekend." Looking up, Ino was taken aback when she realized that Inashi and Siki were both staring intently at her. She also realized that her fingers had clenched into tight fists on her lap, the end of her dark purple skirt twisted between the slender digits. Visions of that brief flash of loneliness in Naruto's eyes and the disgust-filled sneer from the 2 old women flitted through her mind. Bowing her head, Ino said, almost pleadingly, though she could have sworn afterwards that she did not sound like that, "Please don't hate him." Inashi placed his calloused hand on his daughter's shoulder and squeezed it reassuringly. "That's enough, princess." He turned to face his wife. "Don't you think so, Siki?" The dark-haired woman closed her eyes and took a deep, shuddering breath. Her fingers slowly stopped strangling the mug, her hands rested palms down on the table. Then, she smiled, a small, watery smile that somehow whisked away the frightful gauntness that dominated her face earlier. She looked almost like the ordinary Siki that Ino knew and loved. "Of course. Okay, now that everyone's not acting all weird anymore, is anyone going to tell me what exactly is wrong with Naruto?" Ino blurted out impatiently, glaring at her parents with as much authority as a 12-year-old could possibly garner. Which accumulated approximately to nothing. "I have an idea." Inashi interjected with enthusiasm, as though he hadn't heard a single word that Ino had said. Why don't we invite your teammates over for dinner tomorrow? You can help your mom prepare the dishes and maybe you can even make that lovely chicken soup grandma taught you. But, about Naru. Don't forget the sensei, dear, cut and Siki, wits pieced back together and was readily obliged to prevent any future unpleasantness that might arise between her daughter and a certain teammate, lest the secret uncover itself. She smiled her don't worry your teammate is not a demon smile at the bewildered Ino and placidly asked, Kakashi, isn't it? Yes, but Naru. Inashi exclaimed, louder than necessary, I heard Kakashi had to stand guard at the gate this entire week. Genma complained about that this morning. Said something about the slacker reading porn while working. Ino was bordering exasperated, a breath away from pounding her fists on the table to demand attention from the two adults. Naru. Our daughter sensei reads porn. The Jounin scowled at his slip and cowered underneath his wife's towering figure as she advanced menacingly towards him, an equally menacing-looking frying pan in her hand. Yamanaka Inashi, answer my question. Uh-oh. Can you please listen to me? Please, honey, put down that pan, somehow, Inashi managed to squeak under the wrath of his wife, totally ignoring Ino. Though perhaps it would be kinder not to mention that the act was not due to his mission to distract his daughter from possible secret digging. It was done solely on the basis of him coming out of the kitchen with his limbs intact and his skull free from pan-size crater. An angry Siki with kitchen utensils was always a deadly combination, even if he was a Jounin. What is it about Naru? Siki took another step forward. Why didn't you tell me that our daughter sensei reads unsuitable adult-rated reading material in public? The frying pan was by then gleaming dangerously under the artificial lighting of the kitchen and looked pretty much capable of amputating a Jounin if it was given a chance and with proper handling. Siki was a professional. Huffing loudly, Ino crossed her arms against her chest and scowled. There was no way in hell her parents were going to tell her anything. Not with Inashi still trying to talk his way out of death by Kitchenette and Siki attempting to do just that. Sometimes, adults could be such children. Children with dangerous ideas and dangerous toys. The blonde girl heaved a sigh and quietly slipped away, remembering that she had a shower and a warm bed waiting for her upstairs. She managed to stow away some innocent plates that were within her mother's grabbing reach and inched towards the stairs with stealth that would have impressed even Kakashi-sensei. Flicking on the light switch, Ino staggered to her bed and flopped face down onto the soft mattress. She had just defended Naruto in front of her parents. Ino groaned into the mattress, hands splayed above her head. I need a shower, she mumbled, willing her fingers to undone her ponytail and allowed her pale golden hair to pool uncomfortably around her face. Her elbows sunk into the mattress when she propped herself up, blinking blearily at her reflection across the room. A pale girl, with strands of hair sticking out in the most inelegant of ways all over her head greeted Ino. For a second time within 2 minutes, she groaned and repeated, I need a shower. It was a mystery how she survived the trip to the bathroom, pulled on her pajamas, she might have missed a few buttons here and there, and crawled into her bed, as everything was a blur of memory to Ino. The last thing she remembered before collapsing into a dreamless comatose state was her mother's appalled screech and the black beady eyes of Mr. Snuffles. You read that pathetic excuse of a book? Followed by a series of expensive crashes that echoed well over the neighborhood. The next morning was calm. In the mildest of terms. Ino had woken up fully recharged and ready to yell at everyone and everything. It was bright and sunny outside, warm sunlight pouring inside her room once the blonde girl leaned over and unlatched the windows. The sky was beautifully cloudless, painted with the lightest shade of blue, and buzzes of cheerful conversations reached Ino's ears from nearby marketplace. The girl lazily stretched, a satisfied smile playing on her lips as a few joints popped with the movement. She gathered some small articles of clothing that lay strewn across her room from last night and trudged into the bathroom, humming contentedly to herself as rivulets of water proceeded to soothe her sore muscles. Ino picked out a different outfit today, a short-sleeved dark purple top and a pair of black shorts. She eyed her reflection critically, smoothing visible wrinkles and grimacing in distaste when she found out that the top had clung tightly onto her body, showing off more curves than her usual clothes ever did. Apparently, her mother had been too upset to do the laundry and left the poor girl with limited choice. Either the dark purple, tight top or a particularly pale pink dress shirt. With frills. It was unquestionable which one she would rather be found dead in. Drying her damp hair vigorously with a towel, Ino glanced at the electronic clock on her bedside table. The bold red numbers told her that she had half an hour to do her hair, wolf down breakfast and arrive in time for her team meeting. She flung the towel away, reaching for the hairdryer and hairbrush at the same time. 5 minutes later, Ino was hopping down the stairs, trying to fix a couple of buttons on her shorts so that her thighs would not be as exposed as it would have been if she left the buttons on their own. A roll of gauze clamped by her teeth, Ino's colorful profanities were thankfully reduced to mere muffles and the occasional grunts as she skipped into the kitchen. The buttons finally admitted defeat after more fumbling, and Ino slid with ease onto a chair. "Morning, Dad," the girl chirped, smiling a little too brightly at Inoshi. The Jounin was supporting a dark bruise underneath his left eye, and Ino sharply observed that the set of imported plates her father had bought for her mother 2 weeks ago had disappeared from their place inside the glass display. Smirking knowingly at the frowning Jounin, Ino poured some cereal into her bowl and popped open a carton of milk. "Where's Mom?" "Outside. With flowers," Inoshi grunted, took a sip from his cup of coffee and leafed through his morning newspaper as to further ignore his daughter. Ino chewed on her soggy cereal and pouted. Swallowing, she said, "It's not my fault you made Mom angry, you know." Her father shot her a betrayed glare before turning to his newspaper again. "I was dead tired last night and it was your fault to mention Icha Paradise in front of Mom. I have to go," draining her glass of orange juice, Ino bounced to the door. "I'll ask the boys for dinner and somehow blackmail Sasuke if he don't want to go. Do you still want me to invite Kakashi sensei?" "No." The blonde girl shrugged happily and put on her sandals. "Okay then. See you later, Dad." And off she went, stopping at the flower shop to say goodbye and gave her mother a peck on the cheek. The clearing was devoid of any living being except 2 distinctive figures that looked as though they were trying to kill each other from the distance. Ino, knowing better than trusting Naruto with Sasuke, sprinted towards them, fervently praying that they hadn't clawed each other's eyeballs out. Or rather, Sasuke did the madman clawing part and Naruto played the hapless prey. Trying very hard not to imagine Naruto's face with 2 hollow sockets spurting forth blood and 2 dripping eyeballs clasped in Sasuke's pale hands, Ino increased her speed. When she arrived, her chest was flooded with an immense sense of relief. Naruto still had his eyes where they belonged and Sasuke was still pretty much well, Sasuke. The blonde boy was lying spread-eagled on his back, chewing on something that looked suspiciously like a celery stick as he watched the sky. Sasuke had resorted to his favorite pastime, tossing shuriken and kunai at an innocent tree somewhere to his left. She exhaled loudly, catching the attention of her 2 teammates. "Ino-chan, you're late," yelled Naruto accusingly, raising his head to glare at Ino from his lying position. Sasuke acknowledged her presence by ignoring her. Typical. Ino sauntered towards Naruto and sat beside the boy. "Kakashi-sensei's bad habit starting to rub off on me, I think." "That's really serious," Naruto teasingly nodded before rolling on his side and laughed loudly. Gasping for breath, the blonde sputtered, "Imagine Kakashi-sensei being contagious. Everyone would be late for everything and that dirty porn writer's going to be filthy rich. And the Hokage with Icha. "Yeah, you've got a point there," grinned Ino, brushing her bang away. She stared up the cloudless sky, thinking that Shikamaru would have been disappointed as he couldn't laze his ass around because his favorite cloud-watching activity would be futile if there was no clouds. Thoughts of Shikamaru somehow chained itself to a pink-haired girl with excessive forehead syndrome. Sakura must be off somewhere, with Shikamaru and Choji training or yelling at Shikamaru to get off his butt and Choji to stop eating. The grin on Ino's face widened. Sakura was stuck with Konoha's sloth of the century and a human vacuum cleaner, while she had the overenthusiastic Naruto and the Uchiha survivor. Life couldn't have been better. Somewhere amidst entertaining herself with Sakura's possibly scarring experience with her 2 childhood friends, Ino was acutely aware of eyes burning invisible hole on her. She frowned and looked down at Naruto, who was looking up at her. "What are you staring at, you lech?" "You," the boy answered, deadpan. Ink tinges started to creep onto Ino's cheeks, much to her annoyance. "Why?" Naruto chuckled somewhat embarrassedly, sat up and scratched the back of his head. He was still staring, though. "I dunno, I thought you looked different today." "I am?" Ino self-consciously smoothed her palm over the fabric of her dark purple top, frown darkening. "Is it the good kinda different or the bad kinda different?" The boy took some time to consider his answer before coming up with "It's the good kinda different. You look." "Ino." Both blondes looked up at the curt voice, only to find Sasuke standing inches away from Ino. He was glaring, was that murderously? At Naruto, and Ino's earlier images of an eyeless Naruto and Sasuke with extra eyeballs popped up most inconveniently from her memory box. Appalled, Ino shooed the images away and smiled at Sasuke. Hey, at least the Uchiha was making an attempt to start a conversation. That's a good development in his social department. Which made the situation even more suspicious than it should. Why was Sasuke talking in the first place? Ino figured that the best way to know things was to ask the very source of her curiosity. She mentally patted her back for such bright idea. "Yeah, Sasuke. There's something in your hair," that said. He extended his fingers and sifted them gently through Ino's ponytail, brushing out few bits of grass. Task done, Sasuke removed his hand and thrust it inside the pocket of his white shorts. His dark eyes were fixed on Ino's azure ones and the raising color on her cheeks. Ino swallowed and grinned awkwardly. Thanks. Didn't realize when those get in my hair. HN. To be brutally honest, Ino was actually expecting Sasuke to turn around and do whatever cool and boringly broody things that he usually done whenever they had to wait for Kakashi sensei. That usually meant that he would be a clear 20 feet away from them with dangerous pointy objects in his hands and an unsuspecting tree in his vision line. However, to her surprise, Sasuke opted to just stood there, a faraway look on his face and his lips thinning into a grim line. It was like watching a refined marble statue, except that statues did not go around freeing people's hair from the evil clutches of wild grass, and Sasuke just did. Ino blinked in vexed confusion and glanced at Naruto, who were glaring obtrusively at the Uchiha. There was some kind of tension looming over those two, something that was unknown to Ino. And it royally pissed her off. She was sorely tempted to shake Naruto until he tell her what was going on, but before she could do just that, a poof of smoke announced the arrival of their ever-late sensei. Yo. Naruto and Ino automatically sprang onto their feet. You're late. Kakashi sensei's eye curved into a happy crescent and he held up a finger. I was running through the forest when I ran across a giant panda. Liar. Sasuke grunted in time. HN. Well, we're going to the Hokage Tower today, the silver-haired Jounin cheerfully declared, jumping off from the branch he appeared on and landed in front of the three Genins. You're doing your first mission today. Yeah. Naruto roared, punching the air. A mission. Will there be a runaway princess that needs bodyguard or a priest on a secret mission to retrieve some holy things stolen by the mob or protecting a cook with a secret recipe that could make people live forever or. Kakashi sensei held up a hand to stop the tirade. Hi. You'll see once we get the mission scroll, Naruto. His one visible eye blinked appreciatively when it landed on Ino. Changing your fashion style, Ino. The blonde girl furrowed her slim eyebrows and glanced down at her attire. It was still the same top and shorts she put on this morning. Nothing too out of ordinary. What's wrong with my clothes? You have some nice cleavage line there, the Jounin cheerfully, if not a bit too innocently, pointed out, a wide grin stretching underneath his mask. You should ditch that old outfit of yours and wear something like this often. A stunned silence met the statement. You stupid perverted sensei. The very surprised Kakashi sensei was forced to avoid a giant ball of flames and a dozen yelling Narutos at the same time, propelling himself with an elegant arch onto a branch 20 feet above his students. Being a Jounin and the infamous Sharingan Kakashi nonetheless, the silver-haired ninja quickly assessed the situation and concluded after 5 seconds that 2 infuriated boys and a ticked girl was not worth his life. After all, Konoha needed him for about 20 more years or until some berserker missing ninja killed him in a mission. His pride as a Konoha shinobi denied him of being killed on the ground that he had sprouted a dirty joke about his student. Naruto and his cluster of shadow clones were glaring heatedly up at the Jounin, while Sasuke opted for a more cool glare, looking as unruffled as he hadn't just attempted to barbecue his sensei. Ino was positively seething. That's sexual harassment, you idiot sensei. Ino screeched heatedly, glaring daggers at the Jounin. Her eyes were narrowed dangerously and her cheeks were painted brick red, no doubt from the bubble of mortification swelling inside her head. I could have had you reported. Holding his hands up in defeat, Kakashi sensei drawled out with as much innocence as an innocence-less Jounin like him could muster, it's just joke. Don't include Ino-chan in your dirty jokes, perverted sensei. Bellowed Naruto, one hand on his hip while another was pointed righteously at Kakashi sensei. Jumping down for the second time that morning alone, Kakashi sensei chuckled good-naturedly and planted his hand on Naruto's head, avoiding a punch intended for his grinning face and messed up the blonde spikes. I'm impressed, though. You and Sasuke finally worked like one functional team, even if it was to kill me. HN, Sasuke snorted and looked away. The blonde boy, however, had his jaw hung open in horror. Sasuke bastard and me did what? I guess I should thank Ino for that, eh? The silver-haired Jounin winked at the frowning girl. Maybe I'll pitch more dirty jokes at you to get the boys working together in the future. Don't you dare. Hissed Ino acidly, pure malevolence radiating chakra-like from her, and Kakashi sensei, being the genius, knew which line he shouldn't cross and when he should quit poking at the girl. Ino wrapped her arms around herself defensively, the frown darkening. Let's go to the tower and get our frickin' mission already. At least that made Naruto forgot his justified indignation at the Jounin. Chapter 5. Vertigo. Team 7 was walking towards the Hokage Tower, the 3 Genins walking in a line, with Ino taking up the middle position between Naruto and Sasuke. Their Jounin instructor was slouching behind them, immersed in yet another heavenly adventure into pornographic literary escapade. Ino had apparently forgiven her sensei for his dirty remark before, as she engaged herself in a conversation with Naruto. Said conversation consisted of atrocious name-calling and insults tossed back and forth from the two sides involved. They didn't seem perturbed by the exchanged insults though, identical cheeky grins plastered on both blondes' faces. Sasuke was brooding again, a frown adorning his pale forehead every time he briefly glanced at the two happily chattering pair beside him. Ino paused in the middle of telling Naruto that he had soggy ramen for his poor excuse of a brain and looked over her shoulder at the jounin, who had pink tinges on his masked cheeks. The pervert. Scowling, Ino resisted the urge to snatch the vile book away from the jounin and asked, "So, Kakashi-sensei, what kind of mission are we going to take?" The silver-haired jounin looked up from his little orange book and did that reversed you sort of creepy smile at Ino, who narrowed her eyes at him. "Well, you're going to receive mostly D-class missions, judging by the fact that you're fresh out of the academy." "D-class?" roared Naruto, a look of utter disappointment on his face. The blonde boy crossed his arms against his chest and scowled darkly. "That's boring." "Oh. Well, you're just genins," Kakashi-sensei lazily said, slipping his left hand back into the pocket of his pants after he had bopped Naruto's head. "You can't be doing high-class missions with your level right now." Naruto huffed loudly at that. "I'm not afraid. I will be the Hokage someday." Sasuke chose that very moment to grunt. No mistaking of what he meant by that. Before Naruto could yell a battle cry and launch himself at the Uchiha, Ino wisely clamped her hand on the scruff of the boy's orange jumper. Naruto's reaction and the move were easily anticipated that it was pathetic. No decent Hokage gets riled up with a baka. Turning the glare at Sasuke, who impressively glared back, she spat out, "And you?" "I know Naruto's an idiot," said blonde boy struggled and screeched in protest. "But can't you not do that? You know he's annoying when he's screaming his head and our ears off." Sasuke just looked away and grunted again. An amused snicker from behind her made Ino scowl. She released her death grip on Naruto and shot a dirty look at Kakashi-sensei. "And what are you so happy about? A new edition of Icha scheduled for release today." Kakashi-sensei merely snickered some more and grinned, the thin fabric of his mask even stretched to faintly outline his curving lips. "I just realized that you make a good team leader, Ino." "Of course I am." The blonde girl puffed out her chest, attempting to look arrogant and smug. Naruto indignantly retorted, "Hey, who died and appointed you the team leader? If there's anyone who should be the leader, it's me." A thwack on the head silenced the boy. "Of course I should be the leader. It's obvious because I'm the only one with any semblance of maturity in this team." She thwacked Naruto's head again for good measure and shifted her attention at a certain Uchiha survivor. "Right, Sasuke. Don't you dare act all aloof and shit in front of me," she glared at the pale boy, hands on her hip. "I don't care if you have all the girls in Konoha or even the Fire Country swooning over your ass, you're going to participate in any group activity from now on." Sasuke stared at Ino like she had grown another set of breasts. "And remind me to yell at Iruka-sensei for saddling the two of you with me if we ever meet him," Ino continued on as if she didn't notice the look, exasperation evident in her voice. She flicked some stray strands of hair from her face and mumbled, "Really? I have one hyperactive monkey and a vocally deficient pretty boy as teammates." What was Iruka-sensei thinking? "Who are you calling monkey, cheapskate?" "I told you to stop calling me that, Ramen-brained whisker face." Sasuke snorted when the two began bickering again, though the most observant of watchers could discern a faint gleam of hurt flashing through his dark eyes. As fate would have had it, Iruka-sensei was manning the mission desk when they arrived at the Hokage Tower. Sandaime himself settled quite comfortably one desk away from the Chunin-sensei, with a pipe protruding from his withered lips. Naruto immediately barreled headlong into his favorite sensei, knocking a pile of paper on his way towards the tan Chunin and caused myriad of papers floating about the space. The blonde boy grinned sheepishly when he had released Iruka-sensei's slim waist from his grip and realized his mistake. Kakashi-sensei had tucked away his book, one visible eye blinking at the mess. Ino had a dark frown and the clear idiot look what you've done look on her face. Sasuke was brooding again, successfully appearing oblivious of the papers surrounding him. Iruka-sensei was beyond mortification. "Naruto." The sensei chided, horrified as he stared helplessly at all the paper. "I spent 3 hours sorting them out." "I'm so sorry, sensei. I'm really sorry. I didn't see them." Naruto wailed apologetically, afraid that Iruka-sensei would hate him. Why, if Iruka-sensei hate him, then who would treat him to ramen again? And let him stay over for dinner? And patch his clothes up after he tore them? "Let me help you." He hurriedly performed a sequence of hand seals and yelled, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." 10 exact copies of Naruto appeared amidst a settling cloud of smoke. Naruto joined them in an instant and started picking up the papers, shrieking out apologies and promises that he wouldn't do it again to a stunned Iruka-sensei. The Chunin eventually sat down behind the desk again, smiling softly as he watched the Narutos scampering around with similar worried look etched onto their whiskered faces. Sandaime was also smiling, tapping the folders before him with his pipe. Other shinobi that were there supported varied expressions. From amusement to outright disapproval. Ino was also helping, though she was muttering darkly under her breath with every piece of paper she picked. After gathering all the papers, Naruto's clones promptly handed them over to the real Naruto before popping out of existence, and the blonde boy tidied up the stack carefully. Ino thrust her share of the work at Naruto and helped him arrange the papers according to the serial numbers. The boy was helpless if it involved any sort of order. Ino frowned as she sifted through the stack. There's one more missing. What? Naruto began wildly eyeing the floor, desperately searching for the absent piece. When he saw nothing, he moaned with both hands clutching his spiked head, "No. Iruka-sensei is going to hate me forever." Before said Chunin-sensei could convince the anguished Naruto that he wouldn't possibly hate the boy over one missing mission report, a paper with lines of neat handwriting was extended towards Ino. The blonde girl looked blankly at the paper and then smiled at Sasuke, taking it from the boy's hand. "Thanks." "At dead last missed the one by the table," Sasuke nonchalantly confided, face as blank as humanly possible. "Really?" Ino distractedly retorted before handing the complete stack of papers to Naruto and watched the eager boy dispatch them to Iruka-sensei's desk, her lips curling into a small smile. She dusted her hands, tugging down the hem of her shirt that had rode up her midriff when she reached for a paper. Naruto, meanwhile, looked pleased when Iruka-sensei ruffled his hair and told the boy that he was not angry. "So, I heard someone's going for their first mission today," the Chunin teased, circling his arm around Naruto's neck in a headlock. Kakashi-sensei suddenly stepped forward, one blue eye curved into a happy crescent and said, "We are. Mind giving us the scroll, sensei?" The Chunin eyed Kakashi-sensei in a measuring glare for his interruption before raising an eyebrow and released the headlock he had on Naruto. "Please wait for a second," Iruka-sensei replied stiffly, reaching for a tray on the desk. He pulled out a scroll and scribbled something onto the paper in front of him. Putting down his pen, he held out the scroll towards Kakashi-sensei. "Here is your mission for today, Team 7. D-Class." The silver-haired Jounin merely nodded and took the scroll without a word. Naruto started badgering the Chunin-sensei again. "Nah, Iruka-sensei, can't you give us cooler mission? I know this is going to be lame." Iruka-sensei laughed and winked at Naruto. "Well, if you promise to behave today and complete the mission properly, I'll treat you to ramen for dinner." Ino blinked when she remembered her parents' proposition before they started trying to kill each other the night before. She scratched the back of her head awkwardly and said, "Actually, my parents invited my teammates to come over for dinner today." "Really?" Naruto all but shrieked in elation, practically bouncing on the balls of his feet. "Ramen forgotten?" he asked, "Your parents really asked me over?" The girl couldn't help but to grin at Naruto's reaction. "Yeah, you and Sasuke. And what about your poor, little sensei?" asked Kakashi-sensei from behind them, eye dramatically droopy and a hand pressed against his chest. He sniffed and flicked an imaginary tear away from his eye for effect. "How could you push aside your own sensei?" "My dad said you've got guard duty this week and I don't think you want to be anywhere within the kitchen area with my mom around," scoffed Ino. She was glaring at the Jounin when a bright idea waited across her head. Turning to Iruka-sensei, who was smiling as he listened to Naruto's enthusiastic rambling, she excitedly said, "Iruka-sensei can join us too." "Yeah." Naruto immediately agreed, chuckling at the astonished look on the Chunin's face. "Iruka-sensei, you have to come too." "But I have work." Sandaime effectively cut through the flustered sensei's words. "You should take a night off today, Iruka-sensei. I'm sure Izumo or Katetsu can fill in for you." "But..." "Aw, come on, Iruka-sensei," whined Naruto, blue eyes shone hopefully. "It'll be fun." Ino smirked when she heard Kakashi-sensei muttered, "I think I've been forgotten by that brat." She patted the Jounin's back in mock sympathy and coaxed, "Don't feel so bad. Iruka-sensei's 1,000 times better in teaching than you'll ever be." "Thank you, Ino. Your support is very admirable. I'm deeply touched." The smirk grew wider. "Don't mention it." Without taking her eyes off the exchanges of words between Iruka-sensei and Naruto, she said, "You're coming too, you know." Silence. "Sasuke. You can't make me." "Oh, I think I can." Mischief danced in clear blue eyes as Ino tilted her head to meet the Uchiha's darker orbs. She was unmistakably challenging Sasuke, and the dark-haired boy somehow felt like he had made the biggest mistake in his life. Not that he'll admit it, of course. Leaning closer to the rigid boy, she whispered, "You don't want Naruto to know about your obsession with pink items now, do you?" The dark-haired boy uncharacteristically sputtered. "Imagine what Naruto will do with that information," Ino trailed on, taunting Sasuke mercilessly. "And what if, a dramatic gasp, he told your entire fan base?" The horror. Ino, the tone was low and dangerous, promising very painful death if the subject persisted. She could almost hear Sasuke's teeth grinding together. Oh, the joy of blackmailing. I don't think Naruto would ever live that down. Thoughtfully, and rather intentionally, Ino looked back at the bouncing blonde boy. You're getting a kick out of this, aren't you? Whatever are you talking about, Sasuke-kun? Fine. The triumphant smile graced the girl's lips, and it was not only because the defeat she sensed in Sasuke's voice. Apparently, Iruka-sensei had succumbed to the sheer force of Naruto's puppy eyes and was nodding at the boy. The Hokage was laughing heartily besides the sensei. Kakashi-sensei sighed and waved the mission scroll. We have a mission here, guys. Better hurry up. Naruto disengaged himself from his beloved sensei and exclaimed happily, coming. Iruka-sensei, see you later. Be careful, the Chunin waved back, a smile fixated on his face. And Ino-san, what time will you expect us to arrive? Ino blinked. Well, she hadn't thought about that yet. Trust Iruka-sensei to be so practical. Must be the whole lot about being an academy teacher. 8 or something. 8 then, the sensei smilingly confirmed. Have a great day. You too, sensei, Ino retorted as they walked out of the pair of massive doors. Iruka-sensei watched Team 7's retreating back until they disappeared from view. A fresh argument between Naruto and Ino seemed to have erupted yet again, echoing along the hallway. The Chunin shook his head slowly, picking on his pen and opened the folder, ready to resume his work again. His attempt was short-lived though, as a cough from somewhere besides him made Iruka-sensei halted to a stop. Yes, Hokage-sama. The old man puffed out a trail of smoke and smiled at Iruka-sensei. They make a good team, aren't they? I was hoping so, the Chunin-sensei replied, eyes straying to the doors. Though I must say that I didn't expect Ino-san to be such good balance between her two teammates. As always, I trust your excellent judgment, sensei, Sandame said, smiling at the blush blossoming on said sensei's cheeks. He tilted his angular hat thingy to a more comfortable angle and leaned back into his chair. Naruto has met his match, yes. Iruka-sensei scratched the bridge of his scarred nose and laughed. It looks like it, isn't it? I've never seen Naruto opening up to someone like that and it really is a pleasant change. Sandame nodded thoughtfully and allowed their conversation to end there. Their mission turned out to be hunting for a lost cat that belonged to some rich woman that was married to some rich powerful dingbat. As ridiculous and petty as it sounded, the task was harder than Ino had first expected. Apart from Naruto's frustrated screams when they had begun tracking down the cat, Kakashi-sensei hadn't been helping at all. The silver-haired Jounin had happily announced that he would sit back and watch them as a spectator, offering interval advices to his aggravated students and read that dirty book of his with such blatant ignorance that Ino was hard-pressed not to snatch the book and whack the Jounin's silver head senseless with it. The scrawny feline was a tricky case on its own, slipping out of their fingers in an uncanny resemblance of a furry eel every time they tried catching it. Even Sasuke was having a hard time keeping his emotion in check, growling and snapping more than usual. Gotcha, furball. Naruto had lunged towards the cat after a signal from Kakashi-sensei, scooping it from the ground and rolled several times on the leaves-covered floor of the forest, with a bewildered cat pressed firmly against his jumper-clad chest. The damn feline had led them around Konoha in a blind chase, only to end up at the outskirt of the town. Armed with some fancy electronic communication device that their Jounin-sensei had got his hands on from somewhere, they surrounded their target, reporting their position, and considered several escape routes that the cat might took in its attempt to flee from its captors again. Then and only then did they strike. Well, more like Naruto doing what Kakashi-sensei instructed him to do and the other two stood very still behind their respective trees. After their 15th failure, the Jounin had heaved an exasperated sigh, lectured them for a whole 15 minutes, and took control of the mission. Is that the cat? Sasuke asked, taking off the device from his ear. His left eyebrow was twitching in annoyance. Nobody could blame him though. They were more than willing to go berserk if they had the wrong cat after all those effort. Picking up the feline by the back of its neck from Naruto's hands, Ino gave it a scrutinizing glare and nodded. Yep, red bow on one ear. This is Sora, alright. Mission accomplished, Team 7, Kakashi-sensei appeared from a large thicket and grinned at his students. Good. The blonde boy huffed, dusting his dirty jumper and glaring at the furiously meowing cat. Stupid, damned furball. Ino tossed the cat back towards Naruto, who yelped in pain when the cat sunk its tiny claw into the exposed flesh of his hand. To everyone's relief, the blonde still had his fingers circled stubbornly around the cat, though he looked like he was a breath away from shaking the life out of the feline. Or fur. Whichever. Ino felt like she was going to murder someone if the cat got away and they had to give it a chase again. Trickles of blood trailed down the underside of his hand from the little holes that the cat had punctured on him. Naruto grimaced at the sight, more out of annoyance than pain, and carelessly wiped the blood away on his jumper. Ino noticed that Naruto's skin was whole once the blood was gone, but before her curiosity could get hold onto her, Kakashi-sensei had started to walk away, Sasuke and Naruto tailing him. "Hey, wait for me." Sora was mewling pitifully all the way back to the Hokage Tower, and when they handed the cat back to its podgy owner, who squealed and fondled the poor thing like there was no tomorrow, Ino couldn't help but to sympathize the feline. The woman had clasped her heavily jeweled hands around the cat's neck, scarlet painted lips cooing and crooning general nonsense as the cat went limp from all the rough fondling. Naruto even shared his suspicion that Sora had run away from its owner. Instead of the reported getting lost, Ino had to say that she agreed to that and found herself fervently praying that Sora was not plotting yet another getting lost incident anywhere near future. She had enough of cat chasing to last an entire lifetime. Iruka-sensei was nowhere within sight and Sandaime, who was still there smoking on his pipe, told them that the Chunin was in the office doing some last-minute checking on some old mission folders. "Ino pig, what are you doing here?" The familiar voice made Ino turn on her heels, a smirk plastered on her pretty face. "Forehead girl, been polishing that big forehead of yours lately? Ooh, what happened to your hair? I thought you're not into green." Sakura's usually pink locks were disheveled and damp, with some of the locks dripping green dye-like substance onto the floor. Ino fleetingly thought with a suppressed chuckle that the cleaning crew would be seriously pissed off if the substance turned out to be some kind of a permanent paint or something. There were also red and purple smudges on her reddening cheeks and Chinese-style dress. Shikamaru and Chaoji were standing behind the girl, their state almost similar to that of Sakura's. The pony-tailed boy had a lazy scowl on his face, and instead of dripping green stuff, he had purple streaks amongst his dark hair. His hands were crossed behind his head. Chaoji's white scarf had pink and green blotches on it while he munched on a meat bun. A bearded large man in Jounin uniform was staring morosely at a wet pack of cigarette in his hand. "Oh shut up," the green and pink-haired girl looked like she had more insults to flung towards Ino when her eyes suddenly took on a glazed look as she stared at someone behind the blonde girl. "Sasuke-kun, how are you?" The Uchiha crossed his arms but said nothing. Naruto, whose mouth had widened into an inhumanly large grin at the sight of his crush, bounded energetically towards Sakura. He paused when he took in the green dripping thing and colorful smudges on Team 10. "Whoa, what happened to you guys, Sakura-chan?" "Stupid paintballs," came Sakura's low grumble. She brushed a hand over her spoiled clothes, mumbling and muttering bloody deaths. "We had to supervise a birthday party," Shikamaru elaborated, his half-lidded eyes narrowed at the thought. Ino was slightly surprised at the reaction because for all the years she had known Shikamaru, the lazy bum was always infuriatingly laid back and rarely reacted to trivial things. Hell, she had to yell her lungs out just to get him off his ass while they were still in the academy. Then some brats thought that it'll be fun to start shooting at stupid ninja killjoys and the scary smoke man with paintballs. "It hurts too," Chaoji supplied in a distressed tone as he brandished a packet of chips out of thin air. "And I spent almost an hour trying to get the green paint out of my hair," Sakura mourned, running her hair through her suffering hair. "Didn't even get all of it." Kakashi-sensei was petting the bearded man's shoulder in a friendly way, eye a crescent as he apparently tried to calm the other man down. Ino heard a faint good cigarettes wasted and Kakashi-sensei's muffled chuckles that followed the whine. She shook her head, her smirk morphing into a genuine smile when she realized that Sakura was really upset for the state of her beloved pink hair. Tilting her head to his side, Ino casually said, "If you go to Chiaki's shop, she sells this bottle of some shampoo thing that can help you. I've used it once when my dad got some paint onto my head when we were painting the wall. It worked like magic." "Really?" "Uh-huh." Sakura impulsively took Ino's hands in hers and smiled gratefully at the surprised girl. "Thank you." And in 2 seconds, Sakura blinked in disbelief as she seemed to realize what she was doing and dropped Ino's hands in a flash, blushing deep red. Ino pig, I'll get your hair if that doesn't work." The blonde girl raised an eyebrow in amusement. "You're welcome, forehead." "Nah, Sasuke-kun." Sakura had moved on from her eternal rival in a speed that could easily rival Kakashi-sensei's and was smiling demurely at the Uchiha, hands clasped together over her chest. "Are you free tonight? Maybe we can go out to this new restaurant." "I'm busy," snapped the dark-haired boy, much to everyone's surprise. Naruto interjected eagerly, "Yeah, we're going to have dinner at Ino-chan's place." "How cool is that?" "What?" Ino was too occupied with laughing and gasping for air at the same time to explain to the dismayed Sakura that it was not actually a date. The pink-haired girl looked like someone had just announced that Sasuke was getting married and the mischievous side of Ino's mind cackled happily at that. Though her initial intention was to make Sakura jealous enough and prompt the girl to do some drastic measures in order to court Sasuke, then her "I'm a nice girl with bubblegum pink hair, look at me Sasuke" trademark move, Ino couldn't help but to indulge in the effect of Naruto's statement. It was hilarious, to say the least. Yep, life was definitely good for the blonde genin. Chapter 6. Exodus. Potatoes check. Eggs check, Ino nibbled thoughtfully on her index finger as she stared down at her grocery list. The blonde girl was standing inside an air-conditioned mini-market, the handle of a half-full trolley in one hand, while another held a piece of paper that was her list. Team 7 had parted after their first successful mission, with a loud promise to be in time, Naruto, and an almost disgruntled snort that signaled reluctant agreement, Sasuke. Kakashi sensei was gone the second after they walked out of the tower, with a reminder for yet another meeting the next morning. Ino had whistled happily home, planning for a warm bubble bath and maybe some homemade strawberry ice cream that she had left inside the freezer, only to have the grocery list slapped onto her face and her mother all too happily ushering her out of the house towards the general direction of the market before she could even voice out a single protest. Pocketing her list, Ino looked down at the assorted pile of colorful veggies inside her basket and smiled wistfully. Now to find chicken for the soup. Teching over some red apples and wondering if her mother would make an apple pie for dessert if she asked, two distinctive voices that floated somewhere from the other side of the aisle caught Ino's attention, one of them being disturbingly familiar. Ino was about to dismiss them and walk away when she overheard some snippets of the conversation. Serves that bitch right. Too bad Sasuke-kun is in the same team as those losers, Nakari. A more timid, uncertain voice piped up in response. You might want to be careful, Ami. Who knows if Ino might be around here now. I think I saw her when I waited for you. You worry too much. I'm not afraid of that bitch, you hear me? I could have kicked her sorry ass. By that time, Ino was quite certain that she had heard enough and decided to make her existence known. Stepping to the other side to reveal herself to the two speakers, the blonde girl was viciously pleased when a short, red-headed girl with her headband tied around her left upper arm, must be the timid Kari she heard protesting, turned deathly pale in a flash. The red-headed's lower lip quivered as Ino glared her best "you better shut the fuck up or else" glare, not wanting to alert the still blabbering Ami, who had her back at Ino, of her presence. Ino noted that it was somewhat amusing to hear someone insulting her right at her face. Okay, so technically Ami wasn't really spitting all those god-awful things to her face, but it was still amusing nonetheless. No one had the gall to do that lately. The Kari girl had started quivering on her feet, looking close to tears, and Ino felt a brush of pity for the short girl. At least the girl wasn't the one who did the insulting. You know, Ami, Ino finally drawled out in a lazily threatening voice she had so aptly copied from Kakashi sensei as she leaned to the fresh fruit section. For someone who boasted about kicking my sorry ass, it's really pathetic that you couldn't even say it to my face. Ami literally froze at the first syllable from Ino. Tilting her head to stare at the red-headed girl, Ino said, Kari, isn't it? Why yes, Ino-san. Why don't you go and buy, say, an ice cream cone or something? Ami and I have something to talk about. Her reputation as the most terrifying loud bitchy girl in academy could be so handy at times. Ino smirked for good measure. Yes, Ino-san, the red-headed girl squeaked under the smirk, perhaps imagining the many things that Ino could have done to her least, she denied the order. Kari gave the frozen Ami a terrified bow and all but scuttled out of the soon-to-be battlefield. She disappeared without a second glance behind a large-bellied man who was ogling at some huge chunks of something meat. Several seconds lapsed in silence as Ino glared at Ami's back, waiting with her fingers drummed on the metal surface of the aisle beside her. Ino was about to bark some selected crude remarks when Ami slowly turned around, her small eyes narrowed in obvious dislike at the blonde. Sniffing arrogantly, well, as arrogantly as someone who had her knees shaking, Ino scoffed with a mental sneer, she said, I have nothing to say to you, Yamanaka. Seems to me you've got many things to say about me instead, Ino snapped, her blue eyes narrowed in challenge at the other girls. They had fairly clashed the first time they laid eyes on each other, two opposite individuals with different ideals and similar stubbornness, surrounded by their own layers of friends and social status. The incident with Sakura in their early academy days only worked to further fuel the building hatred between them. What, afraid to say when your groupie's not around kissing your ass? I'm not afraid of you. Ami hissed venomously, though the little, barely noticeable quiver in her voice didn't escape Ino's shrewd observation. It was just her luck, and a bad one for Ami, that there was currently no one around the aisle. It wouldn't do her reputation any good if she got labeled as a bully, and Leafs know what her parents would do if they heard about this. Ami placed her hands on her hip, lips twisted into an ugly sneer. So tell me, how's Uzumaki doing? Ino arched an eyebrow, an intense urge of loathing coursing inside her veins at the way Ami pronounced the emphasis on the name. After getting teamed up with Naruto, Ino had began to notice the many subtle glances of either disgust or hatred that the blonde boy received every time they went around the village. Naruto said nothing about it, but the girl was ready to bet 1 year allowance that he noticed those glances as well. Part of her chalked it up to Naruto's earlier days' outrageous pranks, like vandalizing the Hokage monument with paints, though another part, her swelled curiosity, insisted that it was because of some uber secret reason that she knew nothing about. It was therefore with some surprise that Ino found herself with an obligation only brought upon her by herself. She seemed to be getting into a load of shit lately to justify the villagers' action by being Naruto's friend and trying to get to know him better than just a loudmouthed orange human cannonball that sucked in Ramen like it was oxygen. Hell, no one screwed around with her friends. Maybe that's the compulsive side of her personality talking. She took a step forward, radiating evilness, and it was with some satisfaction that Ino noticed Ami taking 2 steps back. What's Naruto had to do with this? Losers flock together, right? Sputtered the girl, barely concealed fear flashing through her eyes as she took another step back, clutching at the metal railing of the frozen section to stop the trembling of her hands. I heard he took 3 tries to pass the genin exam. Must be one stupid. And what's that have to do with anything? Ino interjected coolly, a growl rumbling low in her throat. Who gives a damn if Naruto failed 3 genin exams? He passed in the end, didn't he? Without giving up, Ino thought rather vindictively, images of squishing a minuscule version of Ami under the soles of her ninja sandal suddenly became too appealing to ignore. And those cage buncheons of him kick serious ass. And he could probably outclass everyone in Konoha in a ramen eating contest. And he was certainly the most stubborn, flashy and annoying genin ever graduated from the academy. And Ino blinked out of her short reverie and wisely cut her mental ranting short before she did something drastic that she would later regret, like jutsuing herself into Ami and undress the girl in the middle of the market out of sheer spite. Her knuckles were turning white from the firm grip she had on her trolley, wordlessly challenging the other girl to say anything bad about Naruto just so that she would have an excuse to stuff the carrots into Ami's overlarge mouth. The flowers didn't seem to work back then. Sasuke-kun must be devastated to have. Ino's smirk turned downright malicious. Last time I checked, he was actually very impressed with Naruto's jutsu. Strike 1. Even said to me that he thinks Naruto is more useful than most of this year's genins. Strike 2. Especially his drooling useless fangirls. Strike 3. You're out. Okay, so that was not technically true. But she did saw Sasuke's eyebrow twitching sporadically from her hiding place when Naruto first performed Kage Bunshin no Jutsu in Kakashi sensei's pseudo test, which she took as a sign of being impressed from the usually emotionless and twitchless Ichiha. She had spent the better part of her life watching Sasuke, even if it was for the sake of the sacrifices she made for Sakura. And had come to several conclusions regarding the little gestures that the dark-haired boy was prone to do when he felt things. Like twitching when he was impressed, he twitched whenever Iruka sensei demonstrated deadly accuracy in kunai training or teaching them how to kill more effectively, and grunting a little less than usual when he was happy, usually after blowing up some unfortunate practice dolls with Kaiten jutsus or polishing his kunai collection in class with this weird gleam in his eyes. That one teammate of hers sure as hell was messed up. But that was beside the point. And Sasuke did say something along the lines of, "HN, you're at least good for something," sometime somewhere when the 3 of them were together. Probably after he finished mutilating one defenseless tree with his kunai and shuriken, red. He was in a good mood. And heck, that was as good as any grand elaborated compliment from other normal people. Though manipulating the Uchiha's rare words was not really the most noble or honorable things to do, not that she give a damn about that sort of things anyway, it was deemed necessary in such situation. To crush the ridiculously bloated ego of one Ami. For Naruto's sake, of course, and not for her own morbid pleasure. Nope, not at all. Satisfied that she had successfully convinced herself that she was doing the right thing, Ino's malicious smirk widened at the look of pure disbelief on the other girl's ashen face. Rolling the trolley away from the stunned girl, Ino tossed her head back and carelessly remarked, "Make sure I'm nowhere near you when you decided to badmouth Naruto. You might not be this lucky next time. It won't do to spoil perfectly good carrots just to shut you up." With a jaunty wave, Ino strolled off, humming happily to "Gotta kill 'em all." After picking up other items in her list and also some that were not, the salesgirls were staring funnily at Ino when she paid for them, mostly because she was gleefully giggling under her breath. Ino breezed out of the market with 2 large bags of groceries in her hands and a gigantic grin on her face. Ami was gone when she passed through the frozen food section, and Ino suspected, with a chuckle, that the girl must have fled the scene to mope around with her groupie. Hopefully Kari had enough sense to not join them. It would be such a pity if Ami corrupted another innocent soul to do her bidding. Ino stopped to buy several sticks of her mother's favorite dango from a stall near the market and briefly contemplated of using them to bribe Siki into making some onigiri for the dinner. Inashi was rather fond of her mother's onigiri, after all. It was after a couple of steps towards her house that the blonde girl eventually slowed down, taking shorter strides than the long ones she was used to and stared thoughtfully ahead. It must be painful, she mused uncomfortably as she balanced the weight of her groceries and the small bag that held her dango. To be alone for that long. I have mom and dad, but those two wonder how Naruto and Sasuke feel about going back to an empty home every day. Doesn't it hurt? Naruto had Iruka sensei and me. I don't think Sasuke has any friend, Ino snorted at the thought. The prospect of the silent Uchiha offering his friendship to anyone was as far-fetched as Kakashi sensei giving up on Icha, which was infallibly never. Well then, I'll be his friend. Both of them. See if they can shake me off even if they want to. I hope Naruto likes chicken soup. Ino was jolted roughly to reality when she bumped into someone. Boy, watch where you're going, Dumbus. Cursing ever so colorfully, the blonde girl staggered back, shaking her head and tightened her grip on the grocery bags that were threatening to topple forward from the unexpected collision. She squinted on eye open and her scowl immediately evaporated into a grin. Oh, it's you. Iruka Hinata colored at Ino's recognition and dipped her head low. I'm sorry, Ino-san. I was too absorbed in thinking and didn't see you there. Never mind. It's my fault too. Shoulda watch where I'm going, nah. Ino chuckled good-naturedly and her grin turned mischievous. What are you thinking about anyway, Hinata-chan? It must be so important that you forgot to look around. The blush on Hinata's cheeks deepened. It's no nothing, Ino-san. Just. It was boys, wasn't it? The red was positively creeping into the Hyuga's pale eyes at the random guess and Ino grinned in triumph. Call it a sixth sense if you must. Being her bossy self, gossips are too heavenly tempting sometimes. The blonde girl gave Hinata's rib a soft nudge and winked conspiratorially at the blushing girl. So tell me, who is this lucky guy? I don't. Is it Kiba? A horrified shake of head. No. Yeah, he's too brash and stupid for you. Shino. The horrified head shake increased a level or two. Ino-san, please. The silent and mysterious type out then. There goes Sasuke. Don't understand why other girls dig that. They can be so annoying, you know. I don't suppose you like fat guys, do you? I don't. Phew, not Chaoji then. You'll be frustrated anyway. He's already in love with food. Oh ho, is it Shika? It's Naruto. Ino blinked and unknowingly gawked at Hinata, who was blushing so hard that she looked like she was going to get dehydrated from all the heat. Naruto. Shuffling nervously on her feet, Hinata nodded, index fingers pressed together. A little hesitant and a lot embarrassed, the girl tilted her head up slightly and murmured, Ino-san is in the same team as Naruto-kun, right? Eh? Blinking a few times to clear the fog that was currently misting her brain, Ino awkwardly tried to scratch the bridge of her nose, only to realize that she had to use both hands to hold her groceries and dango bags. Deprived of that option, Ino ended up grinning crookedly at Hinata. Yeah he is. Curiosity, and astonishingly suspicion, kicked into full motion. Why? Naruto-kun, there was a desperate edge in Hinata's voice as she looked everywhere but at Ino. She settled on shuffling nervously again, apparently trying to think up an appropriate answer, which was not really a good idea as that made the blonde girl more curious and suspicious than ever. Ino was about to spew out another question when Hinata hurriedly ducked her head and said, I have to go. Kurenai-sensei is waiting for me. See you later, Ino-san. And the Hyuga was gone in a blink of an eye. Ino mentally cursed. She had been blinking too much today. With a last glance at the direction that Hinata had disappeared to, Ino heaved a sigh of frustration and trotted back towards her house with more than a little mental burden from the brief encounter. She was insert little space between almost pinching fingers, close to pry open the secret, whatever it was. Ino did know that Hinata was not really the brightest bulb around if it somehow involved feelings and general communication, but really, the pale-eyed girl had just became ridiculously incoherent. And Ino was just asking about Naruto, for Leaf's sake. Why would Hinata? Wait. Ino stood petrified in the middle of the road, chewing on her bottom lip. Hinata said that she was thinking about Naruto. Which was unusual. And she blushed. Redder than usual. Like, red unusual too. Because Ino caught her thinking about Naruto. Very unusual. Hinata plus Naruto plus insane blushing equals 2. The realization smacked Ino right at her face. Her eyes widened in horror. Hinata had a crush on Naruto. Whoa, too much information. Gathering her thought and wits, which had self-destruct and was scattered everywhere in her mind, Ino inhaled deeply. Exhaled. Inhaled. As the cogs and wheels inside her head started to grind away, processing and dissecting each intake of the exchange that took place earlier carefully, Ino had willed her suddenly heavy legs to continue walking. The ground didn't feel as solid as it should be under her feet anymore. The blonde girl felt like she was walking on a bumpy cloud that kept spinning around and around in a dizzyingly high speed. Ino swallowed, annoyed when she found that her throat was somewhat dry and parched. So Hinata liked Naruto. Did Naruto like Hinata too? Ino shook her head, her lips curling into a humorless grin. No, Naruto's too dumb to recognize deep affection from the Hyuga, even if it was dancing naked in front of him, wearing Kakashi sensei's face mask. And Hinata's too shy to confess her feeling to the boy. Which was good. No. It was bad, because Hinata should tell Naruto if she likes him so much. But would Naruto like Hinata back if she told him that? Ino's eyes hardened at the thought, and she impulsively kicked a pebble out of her way, oblivious of its clatter against someone's wall. She just needed to kick something at that time. Not necessarily, but he might. Naruto might be too lonely and just, like stupidly convinced himself that he likes Hinata too. When he really doesn't. Shouldn't. Okay, that definitely didn't sound right. It was like she had gone all possessive on the blonde boy or something. Ino chuckled dryly, only to stop seconds after she had begun. Was she? Of course not, Ino whispered, kicking off her sandals at the back door of her house, ambling inside with her arms wrapped around the bags. She headed straight towards the kitchen, relieving her aching arms from the weight, and grinned at her mother, who was rinsing her hands in the sink. Waving the dango bag at Siki, Ino cheerfully said, "Got you some dango." She had to stop thinking for now. Maybe later. Yeah, later. Much later. Siki turned off the faucet, leaning against the tiled counter, and regarded her daughter with a small smile as she wiped her hands dry. "And what are you planning to do with those?" "Let's see." Ino tapped her chin with her finger, staring in mock thoughtfulness at the small bag of dango. "How about I trade these with your infamous onigiri? Sounds fair." "Your father really spoils you," chastised a dark-haired woman, sighing. She leaned forward and tried to reach for the dango, only to have Ino impishly dancing out of the way. "Fine, I'll make the onigiri. Give them over already." "Sheesh, Mom. I swear you got cranky every time dango is concerned. Be careful or Dad might get jealous," the blonde girl fibbed, taking one stick for herself and tossed a bag to the outstretched hand of her mother. Sinking her teeth into the sweet treat, Ino jerked her chin towards the general direction of the groceries and mumbled, "I bought some natto and crackers. Chowji polished them off the last time he came around. Hope you don't mind." Her mother was too engrossed with her dango to provide a reply. Preparing dinner proved to be a mixed blessing when it helped kept unwanted things from Ino's mind for the entire evening, as the girl chattered happily over dicing the carrots and butchering her chicken. The latter was a real mess, and by the end of the task, Ino's chicken was no more than unidentifiable chunks of, well, chunks. Cooking was not really her strong point, but Ino enjoyed the occasional chances where she would spend quality time smearing some slimy concoction that most of the times appeared out of thin air on Siki's face and was rewarded with jovial laughter instead of enraged shrieks. Siki was also content enough to agree to teach Ino how to make onigiri when the girl was not, to quote her mother, running around, saving Konoha from evil ninjas. When she finally left her soup to simmer slowly on low flames, Ino wiped her sweaty brow and tilted her head at her mother. "I'm going up for a shower," the blonde girl announced, untying the soiled apron from her lithe form. She glanced at the clock. 10 minutes after 7. Dropping the apron into a laundry basket, Ino paused at the base of the stairs when she remembered something. Or more accurately, someone. Mom, I forgot to tell you that I invited Iruka sensei too. He'll be here with Naruto." Maybe it was a trick of the light, but for a split second, Ino could see the color on her mother's face drained like someone had sucked the blood away using an invisible syringe. Though Siki looked absolutely fine when she waved a hand and said, "I'll set the table for 6, then. Your father told me that he'll be a bit late, but he'll be here at around 9. You go take your shower and wear something decent." "Mom," Ino pouted, already starting to descend the stairs. "I'm always decent." "Of course, dear." Something told Ino that her mother was just humoring her. Her shower was a cold and quick one. Ino couldn't afford to enjoy the luxury of a long, warm bubble bath with just 50 minutes to spare. Not only that she had yet to pick up an outfit, something decent, she also needed some time to tame her hair. "Do you think it was easy to manage long hair?" Huh. And apply the cursory lines of makeup onto her face, mascara is obligatory. The glance at her alarm clock decreased the remaining minutes to a severe 32 minutes to the promised date. Toweling her hair dry with a hand, Ino rummaged inside her closet for a long-sleeved purple t-shirt that she remembered buying sometime last month, or was it last year? She had already found a pair of black slacks to match the shirt. Now, if only she could find the damn thing. Flinging the damp towel aside, Ino groped blindly for a hairbrush on the table, knocking over a vial of perfume in the process. Almost nauseating thousand roses scent instantly filled her room. Shit. Shit, shit, shit. Ino abandoned her closet to sprang into the bathroom and snatched a small towel, darting to the spreading pool of pale pink liquid in a flash, and swiftly cleaned the mess. She picked up the fallen vial, chucking it into the trash can beside her bedside table, and grabbed her hairbrush. Brushing a hand over her wrinkled slacks, Ino ran the hairbrush almost frantically through her hair and kneeled in front of her closet once again in search for the missing shirt. It was with some difficulty and a cart of curses that the blonde girl finally found said shirt inside a jammed drawer. She had to resort in using a kunai as a substitute for a crowbar to force open the stubborn drawer. Splinters of wood strewn unceremoniously on the floor, Ino slipped the shirt on and stood appraisingly before the mirror. The t-shirt was appropriately plain, except for the crest of Konoha stitched in lighter purple at the back. Ino twisted her hair back into a loose bun, allowing several strands to escape the bun to give it a more elegant look. She folded the sleeves of her shirt to make it reach just below her elbows and began putting on her earrings just as her mother's voice rang from below. "Ino, your guests are here." "Crap. Where's the frickin' mascara?" Chapter 7. Staccato. Pulling on a clean sock on one foot while hopping around on another was not a very dignified situation that a girl could possibly hope to be found in, which Ino had the misfortune to experience firsthand. It also brought several unpleasant incident-prone possibilities into Ino's mind that would have proven to be too much of a hassle to handle at that particular time. Nursing a broken and swelling nose in front of her teammates and ex-sensei was not a welcoming thought. At all. The overwhelming odor of the spilled vial of perfume was starting to nauseate the blonde, and Ino was forced to pause from her current dilemma, searching for the missing pair of her sock, to flung open the windows of her bedroom, allowing fresh night breezes to circulate inside the small room. The girl heaved a sigh of relief once the strong roses scent started dissipating into cool air, before realizing that she only had one foot warmly socked and her right toes were wriggling happily on the cool floor. Damn it. The other sock turned up amongst her kunai collection, though why or how it ended up in there was a mystery to the blonde. She didn't remember stashing any part of her clothing with weaponry. Ino almost tripped on the edge of her bed as she rushed over to the mirror from her closet, nimbly dodging pieces of wood that would demand one hell of an excuse once her mother saw the mess, checking over her reflection for the last time. The girl impatiently rearranged the loose locks of her pale golden hair, tucking them behind her ears and tugging experimentally at her dark purple shirt. She smiled at the soft cottony fabric of the shirt under her fingers. She knew that the shirt was a good bargain, though that one salesgirl was a total bitch when it comes to professional conduct. Inhaling deeply, Ino bolted out of her room and trudged downstairs, trying to keep her expression neutral and attempting to look oblivious to the fact that she was a tardy host. She could always blame her dysfunctional watch for that. Ino-chan. Or maybe not. Naruto was wearing a short-sleeved light orange shirt with two vertical black stripes that ran down from both shoulder lines and a red spiral dominating the front center of the shirt. His knee-length shorts were of a darker shade of orange and there were splatters of half-dried mud dotting its hem. He was not wearing his Konoha forehead protector for once and allowed his bright yellow spikes to fall messily over his forehead. Naruto had his trademark squinty-eyed, foxy grin plastered on his face as he greeted Ino at the hallway, literally bouncing from exuberance. The blonde girl suspected that if it weren't for one of Iruka-sensei's hands that were rested on Naruto's shoulder, the boy would have shot through the roof in his barely contained excitement. Ino couldn't help but to grin back, her tense muscles relaxing ever so slightly at the sight of Naruto. "Hey, Naruto," she turned to grin at the brown-haired Chunin behind her teammate. "Iruka-sensei, glad you can make it." The academy teacher had donned a simple light blue kimono with intricate wave patterns stitched onto the fabric by luminous silver thread and was handing over his black haori to a smiling Siki. Ino noticed that her smile was kind of strained, she couldn't really tell. Siki was one of those people that was not easy to read, even if you've lived with her for practically forever, and that she kept shooting wary, almost discreet glances at Naruto. Ino was pretty much beginning to feel unreasonably annoyed when Iruka-sensei flashed one of his incredibly warm smiles at her and said, "I can't possibly decline your invitation, Ino. Naruto would have dragged me all the way here if I did." "Sensei," said boy whined through the red stain that was spreading across his tan cheeks, pouting huffily at his treacherous teacher. Ino snickered softly and smirked. "I knew that that bottomless pit you call stomach couldn't resist the free meal temptation, whisker face." As she playfully punched the blonde boy's belly, who dodged and stuck out his tongue at Ino, she finally realized that someone was missing. Tilting her head to scrutinize the otherwise empty hallway, she asked, "Is Sasuke late? I thought he'd be here by now." "He's outside," Naruto retorted with a snort. "I bet that sullen bastard's waiting for someone to personally remove his shoes for him or something." Iruka-sensei bopped the back of Naruto's head rather painfully, offering an apologizing half-smile at Sasuke and Ino. Ignoring the boy's muffled indignant outburst, the Chunin said, maybe he's just feeling shy. It must have been a while since he was last invited over for a dinner. Though I was actually very surprised as how you succeeded to convince him to come, Ino. Sasuke-kun had always been averse to socializing before. That's my secret, she tossed her head back in mock arrogance, winking at Naruto and took a step towards the door. I'll go get him. Give me a minute, okay? Let me show you the kitchen, Sasuke prompted, smiling graciously at her daughter's guests. She was wearing a kimono herself, pastel yellow in color, and was plain, except for occasional pink cherry blossoms petals. I've brewed a pot of tea, and the dealer told me that this month's harvest is exceptional. Of course, agreed Iruka-sensei, already walking after the dark-haired woman. He halted to a stop when he saw that Naruto was hesitating. Well, aren't you coming? The blonde boy grinned awkwardly and scratched the back of his head. I think I'll go with Ino-chan and help her drag Sasuke bastard inside if he's being the usual ass. Can I? The Chunin's face broke into a wide smile. Sure. I'll accompany Yamanaka-san until you two fetch Sasuke-kun. Oh, come on already, interjected Ino, swinging the door open. Sasuke's going to freeze his butt outside there if we don't hurry. It's not that cold, Naruto rebutted. Besides, I'm sure he is colder than anything that the weather can dish out. That earned him a smack from Ino. Stop hitting me, will you? Grumbled the genin, rubbing his abused head. I'm gonna hold you responsible if I'm shorter than other people by the end of this year. Ino chuckled and flippantly pointed out, I think it's the ramen that made you short, idiot. You should eat a more balanced diet instead of gorging down noodles soaked in hot water every day. I'll let you know that I drink milk too. A lot, huffed Naruto in defense, already stepping outside to join Ino. He shivered slightly as a cold draft shook nearby bushes, wrapping his arms around his small frame. And I hate all that healthy stuff. They taste funny. The only thing that's funny around here is your non-existent brain, dead last. Sasuke was standing near the picket fence that surrounded a small patch of land, staring down at a cluster of red and purple blossoms, with his hands shoved inside the pockets of his white shorts. He was wearing another one of those high-collared shirts that he seemed fond of, only that this one was black instead of the usual dark blue. The dark-haired boy had also ditched his forehead protector and that thing he wore on his arms, though it did little to change his overall appearance. His face was impassive, and he didn't even bother to look up from the flowers when he had first spoken out. Ino scowled as she had to physically restrain Naruto from jumping the Uchiha then and there. They would never learn to tolerate each other if they continued on like this. What are you doing here? The blonde girl growled, tightening her hold on Naruto's shoulder. Everyone's waiting for you. Chen. I was just thinking, why did you ask me to come? Ino sighed, exasperated. If there's one thing that the girl couldn't understand about Sasuke, it was the way the Uchiha's brain overworked. It was as if the boy was hell-bent on making even the simplest thing complicated solely for the sake of complication itself. And fulfilling his daily demand of angsting. I invited you over to eat, not to think. What's the point of standing there, glaring at my flowers and brood about really stupid stuff? Are you retarded? Sasuke had the grace to look offended at that. We're wasting precious time here. There's food inside. Naruto angrily cut in, face scrunched up in annoyance. He had stopped struggling and had crossed his arms against his chest. You might not appreciate good food, but I do. And I'm hungry. The dark-haired boy opened his mouth, most probably to deliver a scathing remark at Naruto, but Ino beat him to it. Don't you dare snap at Naruto again. She stomped toward Sasuke, stopping only when they were 1 foot away from each other. Her eyes were blazing with suppressed fury, fingers balled into tight fists and fingernails digging into the flesh of her palms. Honestly, boys could be so stupid sometimes. And to think that she had gone to this extent just so that they could spend one measly dinner in peace. You want to know why I asked you to come? Fine. I'll tell you. I wanted to be your friend. I don't give a damn if you're a survivor of whatever massacre. She inwardly winced when Sasuke's face stiffened but continued on nonetheless, her voice softening as the anger slowly ebbed away. I just wanted us to be more than teammates. You, Naruto and me. You know, friends. I don't need friends, Sasuke snapped, his eyes narrowed. The blonde girl's glare intensified into glacial level in record time. Everyone need friends at some point of their lives. Friends are for the weak, the Uchiha retaliated snootily and raised a slim eyebrow. As if he was challenging Ino to a duel of philosophy and words. Which was something that he should not attempt under any situation. Oh? And why is that? Ino had placed her hands on her hip, blue eyes flickering with cold wrath. Anyone who remotely knew anything about Ino would realize that the protected stance was the prelude of the infamous pissed-off Ino and would have fled towards the hills for their dear lives. Oh yes, Uchiha Sasuke was going to pay. No one, and she meant no one could tell her or imply. As it was quite an indirect accusation from the boy that Yamanaka Ino was weak and lived to tell the story. Sasuke would pay, alright. Insert diabolical maniac laughter here. Friends will only hold you down, Sasuke smoothly replied, quirking another eyebrow to join the first one and smirked. Ino snickered inwardly when she thought that the dark-haired boy was being awfully conversational that night. Maybe she could provoke him more in the future to get Sasuke to open up to them. That is, after she's done kicking some sense and respect to her into him. And after he stopped yakking, uncharacteristically, away. They demand attention, protection if they're weaker than you. And expect you to always look up to them if they're stronger. Ino felt like laughing, so she did. Though it came out rather distorted because she was trying not to laugh at the same time. Sasuke was definitely more screwed than she originally thought he was. She was having a hard time deciding whether to blame it on the boy's possibly unbalanced hormones or his bloody past. Or if someone had drugged the boy senseless. Don't tell me that you're suffering from some kind of a superiority complex, Uchiha-kun. It's not healthy for proper mental development. Her tone was snide and sarcastic, eliciting a dark frown from the Uchiha. And I do think your definition for friend was wrong. Partly because you're an arrogant jerk and partly because you're a delusional dimwit. The anger was obvious on Sasuke's face. Apparently, arrogant jerk and delusional dimwit didn't sit well with the boy. What the he? I'm not done yet, Ino interrupted sharply, waving a hand at the boy. The corner of her lips curled into a satisfied smirk as she watched Sasuke stewed silently in his rage. It was about time that someone slapped reality to the Uchiha's face. He was too pampered with all the young prodigy and Uchiha survivor crap for his own good. You're an arrogant jerk because you can't stand knowing that there's someone better than you out there for whatever goddamn egotistical reason that I don't want to know about. And you're obviously delusional enough to mistake Naruto and me for your stupid fangirls. We don't need you to protect us like some damsel in distress, damn it. Friends protect each other. We've got your ass covered if you somehow decided to plunge headlong into shit trouble, and it'd be great to know if you'd do the same for us. I don't need anyone saving me or my ass. As always, Sasuke managed to fabulously miss the main point and somehow took her little speech as an insult to his profound masculinity and ability to pull his own fat out of the fire. It was staggering, actually, the level of plain idiocy and ignorance that Sasuke could pull off sometimes, considering how he was worshipped as a frickin' genius by more than half of the academy, and possibly Konoha too, population. The only thing that must have been bigger than his ego was probably the whole continent itself. She warily eyed the glaring Uchiha, mentally calculating how long she could calmly speak to him before she resorted to yelling her lungs out and started hurling insults and solid objects at the boy. After a moment of various equations, subtractions and quadrupling everything into massive proportion of unintelligible numbers in the end, Ino abandoned the mental calculus as the thing failed to make sense to her anti-calculus, therefore, average and normal, mind. It seemed more of a Shikamaru thing to do, anyway. Like I said, I only invited you here to eat, Ino continued, her voice adopting a cajoling softness that contrasted greatly to her earlier merciless harpooning on Sasuke's deficiency to work as a standard human. Ino made a mental note to stop switching from being friendly to murderous to friendly again too often. People might think that she had serious psychological problem. I want us to be friends, comrade in arms, whatever. I don't care, as long as you treat us as your equals and not something that cling like a fungus on you. Sasuke looked away, glaring stubbornly at a budding flower instead. Ino was getting very, very tired to the silent treatment. And already well beyond pissed off. But that's another matter altogether. Why did she even bother in the first place? You know what, forget it, she shook her head in resignation, turned on her heels and rubbed her forehead with her fingers. You can go home if you want to. I'll tell Iruka-sensei and mom that you've got a headache or something. The firm hand that clamped down onto her shoulder made Ino look up. Naruto was staring at her, a grim expression clouding his usually annoyingly cheerful face. She had quite conveniently forgot that he was there when she yelled at Sasuke, but at that time, Naruto didn't look too upset after being ignored by his two bickering, 99% Ino and 1% Sasuke teammates. There was something different about the way he stared at the blonde girl that made her shiver, despite the absence of cold wind. He gave Ino a tight smile, before unexpectedly narrowed his eyes at the stoic Sasuke and growled through gritted teeth, I'll really kill you if you walk away now. Naruto. Ino-chan only wants what's best for the team, bastard. Sasuke tilted his head up and sneered at the blonde. I know what's best for myself dead last. You shit-eating bastard. For the second time that night alone, Ino had to pull Naruto back, who had his fist clenched and aimed at Sasuke. It was easier said than done, seeing that Naruto was stronger than her and his anger only served to feed that abominable strength of his. Naruto, stop it. The struggle ceased immediately, albeit reluctantly. She panted from the effort to stop the boy, wiping the fine sheet of sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. Ino scowled at Sasuke before staring at the sulking Naruto in front of her. Let's go inside. Iruka-sensei's going to get worried if we take too much time out here. But Sasuke bastard. Let him go, she shot the Uchiha a weary glance and started walking towards the back door. Naruto scrambled on his feet and caught up with the girl, just as Ino spun on her heels and said, Sasuke, I'm sorry I forced you to come. I won't tell anyone about that, you know what, she paused to chuckle sardonically. If that's what you're worried about. The dark-haired boy tensed, though he eventually turned and stalked away into the devouring darkness. Naruto grumbled as he watched the disappearing figure and asked, what was that all about? Ino smirked and tossed her head back, opening the door. None of your business, urchin head. She had never known that arguing with Naruto could be so blissfully distracting. Where's Sasuke-kun? Questioned Iruka-sensei when the two had quarreled their way into the kitchen. The Chunin was nursing a cup of lukewarm tea and was in the middle of a pleasant conversation about the properties of various plants with a delighted Siki when Naruto and Ino barged in, Ino's index finger prodding Naruto's chest as she persisted on the base of her argument. Which involves the blonde boy, a green goat and a pink-spotted sparrow. Don't ask. Ino shrugged and claimed a seat beside her mother. He got a headache or something. Said he's sorry, she was interrupted by Naruto's snort and spared a withering glare at the blonde. Naruto winced and looked guiltily away. So I told him to go home. Poor boy. I hope he's okay. Siki poured the tea into 2 clean cups and placed them in front of the 2 genins. She paused slightly as she stared at Naruto, an indiscernible expression on her face. An awkward smile tugged at Siki's lips when Naruto thanked her and greedily gulped down the tea as she slinked back to her chair. Her eyes never left Naruto's cheerful face for quite some time until the boy cocked his head and grinned widely at her. Your tea is very nice. Naruto said, nodding enthusiastically. It's not too bitter like Iruka-sensei's, the Chunin sensei smiled good-humoredly at the reference. But not too sweet. Siki inclined her head and replied, eyes softening, thank you. I'm glad you like it. Can we eat now? Ino chimed in, her cup drained empty. I could hear Naruto's stomach grumbling from here. Hey, my stomach was not grumbling. Protested the boy hotly, over his 10th cup of tea. His cheeks reddened when his stomach did grumble a second after that and he glared accusingly at Ino, who was laughing heartily at his predicament. Naruto pouted and turned to Iruka-sensei for support, only to find that the tan Chunin was also laughing behind his hand. Siki was chuckling softly to herself. No fair. You're all ganging up against me. Ino uncovered her bowl of rice, clapped once and announced, let's eat. Naruto automatically shut up at that. Picking up a slice of stir-fried eggplant, Ino transferred it into Naruto's bowl and grinned at the chagrined boy. Vegetable. Eat. But I don't like eggplant. Complained Naruto, prodding the offending morsel with his chopsticks as if it would jump to life and strangle him for the insult. He stared longingly at the plate of onigiri and made a sour face as he finally succumbed under Ino's death glare. Chewing slowly, the blonde asked, where's your, father? Dad? He's out doing a mission for the Hokage, I guess. He'll come home later. Naruto stopped chewing and whistled appreciatively. Your father's a ninja too. Yep, he's a jounin. He's really good and cool. But I promised him that I'm going to be stronger than him. That's why I want to be a ninja too. Siki suddenly placed down her pair of chopsticks and rested her hands on her lap, staring somberly at Naruto. There was an appraising look in her eyes, like she was trying to judge the boy using her own standard. Iruka-sensei noticed the look, though he remained silent and opted to wait for the dark-haired woman's action. The Chunin shifted uneasily on his seat, sipping his soup in silence, and tried to remain oblivious of Siki's rigid and unrelenting posture. Naruto was too busy fending off Ino from placing more fried vegetables into his bowl to notice it and was caught by surprise when Siki asked, where are your parents, Naruto-kun? Ino gaped at her mother before looking back at Naruto. The blonde boy had frozen in mid-chew, his fingers unconsciously pressing the 2 slim wooden sticks tightly together. Swallowing the remnant of chicken that she had been chomping on, Ino hastily said, Mom, Naruto don't. It's okay, Ino-chan, Naruto muttered, smiling at Ino and then at Siki. His eyes were cast downwards when he responded, I don't know about them, Yamanaka-san, but I have Iruka-sensei now. He glanced at the academy teacher, whose warm smile was more than welcomed at that time. And that's all that matters. I see. Siki thoughtfully nodded, picking up her chopsticks again. Ino told me that you want to be the future Hokage. Naruto's face lit up and he grinned, that too the confident grin he wore every time someone brought up the subject of his ambition. Yeah, I'll be the Hokage and the strongest shinobi in Konoha. Then, everyone will acknowledge me. You're too loud to be a Hokage, scoffed Ino, wiggling a finger at her energetic teammate. Hokage needs to be loud, Naruto haughtily reasoned, puffing out his cheeks. So that everyone will listen to me whenever I give out an order. The blonde girl snorted. So will your enemies, idiot. No, they won't. They will. They won't. They will. They won't. Will too. Will not. Who's that brat yelling at my princess? Naruto was lifted by the scruff of his orange shirt, much to the boy's surprise and annoyance. He kicked and struggled until he came face to face with a handsome man wearing a Konoha forehead protector and had his fair hair tied back into a ponytail. Very much like Ino's. The man was glaring in displeasure at Naruto, one hand on his hip while another holding the blonde up. Naruto frowned. He didn't like being treated like a kid. Who are you? Let me go. Ino giggled from her seat and waved a hand at the man. Hey dad. This your dad, Ino-chan. Naruto raised his hand and did a mock salute. Nice to meet you, Yamanaka-san. When the fair-haired man showed no indication that he was going to let the boy go, Naruto scratched the back of his head and hesitantly said, can you, put me down now? Please. You were yelling at my daughter, accused Inoshi, his eyes narrowing. It was clear that he had switched from the shinobi of Konoha mode to the overprotective father mode as soon as he had stepped into the house. Yeah, well she started it. Naruto indignantly pointed out, jerking a foot at the still giggling Ino. Inoshi turned to face his daughter. Did you, princess? Nope, she shook her head, shoulders shaking. I was just telling him the truth. Hear that? She was telling you the truth, the jounin spat out at Naruto, who cringed and glared at the source of his current mishap. The girl merely shrugged and nibbled on an onigiri, sharing chuckles with Iruka sensei and her mother. If I found you yelling at my daughter again, here, Inoshi cracked his knuckles threateningly and Naruto gulped. You'll wish that you've never been born when I'm done with you. Naruto was brusquely dumped onto his chair after the threat was delivered. Inoshi glared at the blonde boy and settled on a seat at the head of the table. He beamed at his guests and asked Ino, where's your teammates, princess? Sasuke had gone home because he had a headache and you've just scared the shit out of Naruto, dad, the girl replied with another chuckle. Although Ino knew that it was not nice to laugh at Naruto, after all, wasn't it her fault that her father bullied the boy in the first place? But it was just too funny to miss out. She'll just treat the poor boy to ramen later then. But remembering Naruto's demon-like appetite, Ino crossed the idea at once. That's the Naruto. The jounin exclaimed in disbelief, arching an eyebrow at the blonde boy who was mumbling and muttering darkly into his rice. He turned to look at Iruka sensei and bashfully laughed out loud. I thought that brat is Iruka's son or something. Ino erupted into a fresh fit of mad giggling, Siki not too far behind. Iruka sensei was staring in horror at Inoshi. Naruto had choked on his mouthful of rice and chicken and was pounding at his chest. Inoshi-san, I'm not even married yet. Admonished the Chunin sensei, a pretty shade of pink clinging stubbornly onto his cheeks. The jounin grinned apologetically and waved a hand. Sorry. You know how it is, Iruka sensei, us ninjas and our secrets. I just found out that Kurenai's dating Asuma this morning and I've known the guy since he's a Chunin. Kurenai sensei and Asuma sensei. Yeah, and hey Inoshi caught his wife's warning glare and coughed uncomfortably into a fist. He leaned forward, critically scrutinizing Naruto like he was seeing the boy for the first time. He's a bit short for his age, isn't he? And loud, supplied Ino from the sideline, sticking out her tongue at Naruto. Inoshi nodded in agreement. And loud too. He downed his cup of tea that Siki had poured out prior to his arrival and popped an onigiri into his mouth, smiling as he chewed on the rice ball. There's nothing better than my wife's rice ball after a hard day at work. So, what were you two fighting about? I told Naruto that if he wants to be a Hokage or even a proper shinobi, he should stop being so loud, Ino answered, sipping on her tea. She had finished eating and was leaning back into her seat, waiting for everyone to get through the course. Because the enemies can hear him if he's shouting his head off and creating a ruckus. Ino's got a point there, brat. Inoshi picked up the bowl he'd uncovered, along with a pair of wooden chopsticks alongside it. Then, with the bowl tilted downward to his face, he began to cart a chunk of the rice and toppings into his mouth. Chewing along, he set his side on the one smaller bowl next to his rice bowl and lifted its lid, revealing a pleasant aroma and thick soup swirling around small chunks of chicken and potatoes. His lips curled into a proud smile as he swallowed a mouthful of the soup. Licking his bottom lip, Inoshi said, you've improved since last time, princess. Naruto paused from hauling everything to feed his face and gawped in awe at Ino, who had blushed scarlet at her father's compliment. You made this, Ino-chan. It's really good. I like this soup the most. The blonde girl scratched a bridge of her nose in embarrassment and shrugged, attempting not to look too pleased with herself. She was failing quite miserably in her attempt. Well, if you really like it, maybe I can make some for you later. Really? I told you you're too loud, frowned Ino, though she still had a small smile on her reddening pale face. "I'll just kick the enemy's ass if they got too close then," Naruto replied confidently and resumed stuffing his face again. The girl grinned, muttering idiot affectionately under her breath. Inoshi narrowed his eyes in suspicion at his princess and the brat. After the last of the dinner was cleared from the table, the three adults had moved to the living room to further discuss some boring grown-up stuff, as Ino huffily dubbed it to be, and left the two genins inside the kitchen with some chores. Well, actually, Siki had to drag Inoshi out of the kitchen when the jounin initially refused to allow his precious daughter to do dishes alone with the short loud-mouthed brat. It took some convincing, from Ino's part, and a whole lot of kitchen utensil-based threatening, Siki's, until Inoshi petulantly allowed his wife to lead him towards the living room, though not without some harshly whispered warnings to Naruto, whose face paled when he heard them, where Iruka-sensei was waiting with his fist stuffed inside his mouth to stop himself from laughing at the older jounin. "Don't mind Dad," Ino mumbled, placing the dishes into the dishwasher and set the timer. She tied the top of a black plastic bag that held the leftover of their dinner into a knot and tossed it inside a dustbin at one corner of the kitchen before turning to face Naruto. The boy was happily chewing on another onigiri, sitting on a chair with his right leg propped on his left knee. Ino fetched 2 glasses from the shelves, opened the fridge with one foot and took out a bottle of fresh orange juice. She placed the glasses onto the table in front of Naruto and filled them halfway with the orange liquid. "He still thinks of me as his little girl now and then. Especially around boys. I think he's growing senile." Naruto nodded absently at the joke, his eyes on Ino as she moved fluidly around the kitchen. Wiping the wet counter with a rag cloth, rearranging the vase of pink and white carnations on one small coffee table, drying the washed dishes and cups, stacking them inside some cabinets, tucking back some locks of hair that escaped her loose bun, the frown on her face as she scrubbed vigorously at one stubborn dirty spot on a white porcelain plate. The wide satisfied smile when she held up the spotless plate and then the curious half grin when she noticed that he was watching her throughout the simple chores. The blonde boy chuckled ruefully when Ino quirked an eyebrow questioningly, reaching out for the glass of juice to give him an escape from her impending probing. Ino rubbed her damp hands with a dry cloth, her bare feet creating an odd rhythm of soft pitter-patter on the parquet floor as she sauntered towards Naruto. When Naruto tried to take another swig from the glass, he was dismayed to find it empty. And that Ino was seating across the table, tapping her carefully manicured fingers onto the wooden surface of the dining table. "Well?" The boy lifted his head and asked, with all earnest, "The things you said to Sasuke bastard, did you mean it?" Ino's eyebrows furrowed into a frown as she tried to remember the details of her little fight with the Uchiha. Coming out with only scratches of it, the girl pursed her lips. "Which one?" "About we being friends." Naruto willed himself to continue peering into his teammate's eyes, into that different shade of blue than his. But he liked them. Ino's eyes reminded him of the color of sky when he first met Iruka-sensei. It was going to rain, maybe a storm too, and the blue sky was vaguely covered with a stretch of gray clouds. Bluish gray, just like Ino's eyes. "Did you mean it?" "Of course I do," she replied in a certain confident tone that made him felt stupid for even doubting her words. Ino cupped her face with her open palms, her elbows supporting the light weight. "Why do you asked?" He looked down at the glass in his head, the transparent mirror reflecting his whiskered face. And he remembered Mizuki-sensei's ruthless words. Naruto inhaled deeply, stroking the smooth glass with his calloused thumb. "I've never had a friend before." "So?" The boy blinked at Ino, who was frowning at him. She waved her hands wildly in the air, gesturing something. "The past's the past. Now is what matters, right? When you've become stronger, you'll find more friends. I'll be here until then. Iruka-sensei too. I think Kakashi-sensei is somehow our friend, though he's a pervert. And Sasuke. He can go to hell," Naruto vehemently hissed, remembering all that things that bastard had said to Ino. And his disappearing back when he walked out on them. "And if he does, we'll have to follow him, nah." She stretched her long legs, grinning lazily at Naruto with all the expected feline grace. Ino rested her chin on her drawn knees, toes wriggling over the edge of the chair. "We're teammates. I told him that we'd watch over his ass if he did something stupid and I'm not someone that goes against my words. And remember what Kakashi-sensei said when we passed his test." Naruto grinned at the memory. "You're worse than trash if you left your friends behind." "Yeah, that pervert sensei's right." They ended up grinning at each other in a comfortable silence. "Naruto. We're going." Iruka-sensei walked into the kitchen, followed closely behind by Inoshi and Siki. The two Yamanakas were arguing over something, though Inoshi was losing by the look of it. Naruto nervously jumped to his feet when the jounin dropped his failing argument with his wife and glared at the blonde boy as if he was purposely looking for a reason to carry out his threats from before. Siki heaved a sigh at her husband's immature act, whacking the back of the man's head with a wooden spatula that materialized out of nowhere. Iruka-sensei and Ino giggled when Anashi yelped in protest, the blonde girl coming to her father's rescue from the wrath of Seki's spatula. They moved towards the front door in a loud and cheerful procession, though Ino disappeared for several minutes when she claimed that she left something in the kitchen. "Thank you for the great dinner, Seki-san," Iruka-sensei said as he slipped on his haori. He also nodded gratefully at Anashi. "I really enjoyed it." "Yeah, me too." Naruto beamed at Anashi and Seki alike. "This is the best dinner I've been to." Ino, who had appeared from her brief disappearance earlier, smirked at the gratifying outburst. "This is the only place you've been for dinner, except Iruka-sensei's house, urchin head." "Is that true, Naruto-kun?" asked Seki, kneeling in front of the boy, her expression serious with all her maternal instinct. "No one ever invited you over before." Naruto grinned sheepishly and nodded. "I don't mind, really." To everyone's surprise, Seki suddenly pulled the blonde into a tight hug, rubbing circles on Naruto's back. She pulled back and placed her hands firmly on the shocked boy's shoulder, her face set with determination. "You can come over anytime, Naruto-kun. Anytime. Drop by before you go to your team's meeting. We can have breakfast together. Iruka-sensei told me that you only eat ramen at home, so make sure that you come here often because I don't approve of my daughter's teammates suffering from malnutrition. Understand?" But. "I don't want any but from you," chastised a dark-haired woman and gave Naruto a curt nod as a sign of encouragement. "Promise me that you'll do that." Naruto's mouth quirked into a crooked grin, his eyes a bit misty, but everyone seemed oblivious of it. "I promise." Seki smiled at the boy and stood up, dusting the lower half of her kimono. She leaned against her husband. Anashi circling his hand around the woman's slim waist lovingly. "Make sure that you keep your promise. I'll be waiting." "Mom," Ino mock whined from besides them, her eyes glinting mischievously. She pouted in exaggerated melancholy and simpered, "I know you always wanted a boy instead of me. How could you? Don't flatter yourself. You're more violent than most boys, Ino-chan." Naruto gleefully teased, dodging the punch aimed for his head from the furious blonde girl. He danced away from Ino, hiding behind a laughing Iruka-sensei. "See, I told you so." The scuffle was effectively stopped by Anashi, who growled at Naruto for calling her precious princess unladylike, though that earned him a painful whack from Seki's spatula of doom. Naruto shrugged on his jacket, grinning at the sight of the tall Anashi cowered in shame as his wife chided him for his behavior. His grin faltered for a split second when the jounin shot the boy a glare before the spatula made contact with Anashi's skull again. Anashi winced, mumbling a faint sorry at Seki, and listened as the woman prattled on. "I'll walk them to the gates," Ino said over her shoulder, opening the door for her two guests. She had one hand hid behind her back, obscuring whatever it was that she was holding. Seki nodded, smiling at Iruka-sensei and Naruto. Her eyes lingered longer on the blonde boy. "Good night and thank you for coming." The thankful smile she directed at Iruka-sensei had a hidden meaning in it. "I'm glad you brought Naruto along." "You should thank Ino," the Chunin modestly said. "Good night to you too, Seki-san, Inashi-san." Iruka-sensei gave the couple one last bow and walked through the door. Naruto waved a hand, a wide grin on his face. "Thanks for the food. See you." When they reached the gates that separated Ino's house from the main road, the girl thrust a small box towards Naruto, who blinked and almost dropped the cloth-covered, lacquered wooden box in surprise. "What's this?" "Onigiri," Ino answered simply, a badly covered anxious smile gracing her lips. "I made those this evening. They're not as good as mom's, but I'm still learning." As Naruto gave the Ino's lean figure a last wave, he thought that she looked very pretty, with her wind-ruffled hair and wide, sincere smile. And of course, what he liked most about Ino was her blue-gray eyes. Naruto smiled and held onto the small box like it was the most precious thing he had ever received. TBC. What if Naruto and Ino Team 7 bashing? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.